The blind box I casually opened actually contained an entire magical civilization curled up inside. A few drops of cold medicine could end a deadly plague sweeping the continent. A handful of breadcrumbs could sustain a tribe through the winter. A single soda can could fully arm an army of tens of thousands of miniature soldiers. Even better, the blind boxes I bought later opened up a second, a third, and even more miniature worlds. I can even connect the various miniature worlds together and look down upon the collision between different civilizations. My name is Silas, and I bought a weird blind box online. It only took 40 minutes after placing the order for the courier to deliver it. I found some scissors and tore open the packaging. When I saw clearly what was inside, I was stunned on the spot. It was a tightly sealed rectangular glass cover clamped over a metal base. Inside, there were mountains and Riversit was an incredibly realistic miniature landscape. What was even more outrageous was that inside the glass cover, a tiny sun the size of a ping-pong ball was moving, with clouds floating beside it. I walked around it and watched. The little sun set on one side, and a little moon immediately rose. Inside the tiny buildings on the ground, lights actually lit up. 1 minute equated to one cycle of day and night. I quickly rummaged through my cabinet for a magnifying glass and leaned in for a closer look. There were actually living creatures inside. There were humans and animals, but the flow of time was so fast that they were all running around as blurs. The sky just happened to darken, and I subconsciously pressed my hand on the metal surface, wanting to turn on my phone's flashlight to illuminate it. A terrifying, irresistible suction force fiercely grabbed me. My vision went black, the wind howled in my ears, and my body plummeted madly. Inside the miniature world, by the Silverfall River, over 100 miniature cavalrymen riding tall warhorses were brandishing curved blades, tightly surrounding 3 girls. The bald brute leading them had a sinister grin on his face, staring lustfully at the wheat-skinned girl in the middle. Little brat of the Valerian family, hand over the heritage relic. Otherwise, you'll be going back with me tonight to be a foot-washing slave girl. The girl clutched her chest tightly, drew the short sword at her waist, and roared, "In your dreams, for insulting the Valerian family, I want you all dead." Just as she finished speaking, an ear-piercing howl suddenly tore through the sky. The bald brute tilted his neck back, looking dumbfounded. A blinding beam of light smashed directly down from the heavens. Bang! A massive force blasted the ground open, and the overwhelming shockwave sent the surrounding 100-plus cavalrymen flying. The bald brute at the very epicenter of the explosion was smashed into a pile of mush along with his horse, and was immediately burned to ash by the high temperature. As the beam of light dissipated, I stepped out of the massive crater, looking down at my glowing body. It turned out my main body hadn't entered. This was just a consciousness projection. I looked up, and through the clouds, I could faintly see my enormously colossal self outside the glass cover. The remaining cavalrymen were frightened out of their wits, desperately shrinking back. I couldn't even be bothered to look at them. I walked straight up to the leading girl. She was trembling all over. Her knees gave out, and she fell directly to her knees, raising a delicate little sculpture high up with both hands. I reached out and took it, and a surge of unfamiliar memories instantly flooded my mind. It turned out this world was divided into 3 major families. The girl was named Luna, and the sculpture in her hands was the heritage relic, the Ouroboros. This thing could forcibly fuse 2 completely different creatures together, turning them into a much more ferocious new species, and it would absolutely obey my commands. Leaving this in the hands of these cold weapon-wielding little people was simply a colossal waste. I stared at Luna and spoke, "I accept the item. In exchange, you may make one request." Luna didn't dare to look up. Gritting her teeth, she said, "Please, God, protect our Valerian family for 20 years. 5 days in reality, 20 years here." This girl wasn't greedy. I liked smart people. I gripped the Ouroboros and flicked my finger through the air. A little lizard by the river was yanked into midair by an invisible force and smashed heavily onto an enemy warhorse. A burst of black and white dual-colored light erupted instantly. The warhorse neighed madly. Its originally smooth coat rapidly grew pitch-black scales. Its hooves turned into sharp claws, and its tail transformed into an armor-plated iron whip. A miniature drake horse was forcibly created just like that. This newly born drake horse reared its front claws and fiercely whipped its tail. The enemy cavalryman, still in midair and yet to land, had his spine snapped instantly, falling to the ground as a pile of mangled flesh. The enemy collapsed completely, turning their horses around and fleeing like madmen. I patted the drake horse's head and ordered, "From today on, you will protect the Valerian family in my stead." With that, I turned into a beam of light, soared into the sky, and disappeared directly into the night. The moment my consciousness returned to my body, I almost couldn't stand steady. The screen on the metal base lit up, notifying me that possessing the Ouroboros allowed me to harvest the miniature world's energy. Source essence. I immediately followed the instructions and pressed my hand onto the ringed double snake totem on the screen. The clouds inside the glass cover churned madly, and traces of translucent energy rushed directly into my body through the glass. In this single instant, the atrophied weakness in my limbs that I had been suffering from for days was swept away. My fatigue completely vanished, and my complexion became so rosy it was as if I had just drunk a top-tier healing potion. I clenched my fists tightly. This blind box was literally a life-saving divine artifact. I slid open the side of the glass cover to carefully observe the terrain inside. The Ragnar family lacked food, the Valerian family lacked horses, and the Navarre family to the north was a fence-sitter. Right now, the Ragnar family's grand army was crossing the river, preparing to forcibly assault the Valerian family's home base. Since I promised to be a bodyguard, I had to do some work. I walked to the corner of my courtyard, pinched my fingers, and picked up a common worker ant. Walking up to the glass cover, I aimed it at the eastern plains, the Ragnar family's home base, and released my fingers. Boom! A mere 2mm ant in reality, dropping into the miniature world, was a world-destroying prehistoric behemoth. The ant landed with an earth-shattering boom, directly crushing the outer wooden palisades. Several Ragnar guards drew their iron swords and charged up. The giant ant didn't even look at them, just thrust its massive mandibles forward, instantly impaling them all the way through. The entire family's lair instantly fell into chaos, with screams echoing endlessly. Through the magnifying glass, I saw an old man, being carried on a wooden plank by his guards, staring intently at the sky. He wasn't looking at the ant on the ground. He was actually looking at the colossal hand I had just retracted. This old man was quite interesting. He could actually perceive me outside the glass cover. Having resolved the rear, I turned my gaze north. Backed by the Drake horse, Luna hadn't bothered with the frontal battlefield at all. Instead, she led over 300 spearmen directly into the territory of the fence-sitting Navarre family. Relying on their stone walls and massive wooden gates, the Navarre family completely disregarded this small force. Wallace, the Navarre family's greatest warrior, stood atop the wall with a large iron sword, just about to mock them. The Drake horse snorted, suddenly exerting its strength into a mad sprint. Thud! Its scale-covered head violently smashed into the city gate. The entire stone wall shook violently, and the thick log doors caved in on the spot. The guards went mad with fear, hoisting stones the size of human heads and hurling them down. However, when the stones hit the Drake horse's scales, they didn't even leave a white mark. The Drake horse abruptly spun around, executing a divine dragon tail whip that shattered the wooden doors. Immediately after, it reared its front hooves high and brought them crashing down. The gates were thoroughly pulverized. Wallace saw red, jumped down, and slashed his sword at the Drake horse's neck. The Drake horse let out a mad roar and whipped him over a dozen meters away with its tail. Luna took advantage of the momentum, charged forward, and placed her sword against his neck. Having won the battle, Luna arrogantly led her people into the 3-story stone building at the center of the Navarre family to settle accounts with their leader, Sylvia. However, the moment she walked through the door, Sylvia directly flipped open 3 large chests. They were filled to the brim with iron ore, copper ore, and finished weapons, and she even threw in over 400 top-grade warhorses as a bonus. This gesture was so massive that Luna choked on her words on the spot. Seeing through Luna's bluff, Sylvia directly stated her position. As long as Luna destroyed the Ragnar family, the Navarre family was willing to surrender unconditionally. Holding a sea of compensation, Luna had no choice but to lead her people into a retreat. What a brilliant move to spend money to avert disaster. Once everyone had left, Sylvia collapsed into her chair, her face full of exhaustion. She reached up and took off a translucent crystal pendant from her neck. In that single instant, the black hair at her temples actually turned completely ash-white. So that's how it is, relying on overdrawing your lifespan to exchange for superhuman wisdom. I stepped out from the corner of the balcony, staring at this clever woman. She jumped up in fright, gripping the pendant tightly. But seeing the peculiar faint light radiating from my body, she immediately felt the crystal's agitation. Sylvia's knees gave way, and she knelt directly on the floor, pressing her head hard against the stone slabs. "Are you a deity?" I ignored her, walked straight to the leader's throne, sat down, and spoke coldly. "That stone of yours, I want it." Without a shred of hesitation, Sylvia raised the pendant above her head with both hands. I snatched the crystal and fiercely squeezed my 5 fingers. Crack! The crystal shattered, and an extremely pure source essence instantly rushed through all my limbs and bones. This stuff was called ether crystal. It was absolutely a top-tier coagulation of source essence. I leaned back in the chair, looking down at her. "The rest of the ether crystals, when are you going to hand them over?" Sylvia trembled all over, obediently leading me into a hidden secret chamber beneath the stone building. Good heavens! On the stone shelves covering all 4 walls, hundreds of ether crystals were densely lined up. These cunning foxes had actually hoarded this much wealth. I walked slowly past the stone shelves. Wherever I passed, the ether crystals successively turned into streams of light, frantically surging into my palm. Hundreds of ether crystals were drained completely dry by me. This surge of energy was simply terrifying in the extreme. I felt my main Botus bones cracking and popping. My life tier directly skyrocketed to crank. Seeing Sylvia kneeling on the ground, shaking like a leaf, I kept the final ether crystal and crushed it single-handedly above her head. Pure motes of light fell into her body like a torrential rain. Her withered life force instantly surged upward. The fine lines on her face disappeared completely, and her ash-white hair visibly turned back into a head of lustrous black hair. Sylvia, having regained her youth, looked on in dumbfounded awe. I dropped the sentence, "Collect more ether crystals for me," and directly withdrew my projection. Returning to reality, I looked at myself in the mirror. My height had literally shot up by 3 centimeters, and my shriveled muscles had become incredibly full. Let alone else, I felt I could punch a cow to death right now. While munching on some bread, I continued to observe the miniature world. Time had already advanced by over a month. The Ragnar family had been thrown into chaos at both ends by the giant ant I threw in, and their frontline army was forced to retreat to defend their homeland. As it turned out, these guys couldn't kill the ant, so the new leader guy actually came up with a sinister scheme. He led a suicide squad of over 100 cavalrymen, scattering food all along the way, forcibly luring the giant ant toward the Valerian family's territory. Trying to borrow a knife to kill someone? Playing this trick right under my nose. Who do you think you are? I activated my projection once more, descending onto the wilderness of the Ragnar territory. Right then, a miniature male lion crouching in the grass actually mistook me for prey. Roar! The lion opened its blood-stained maw and lunged fiercely at me. I didn't even try to dodge. My right hand shot out, accurately gripping it by the neck. Using single-arm strength, I swung this ferocious beast in a full circle and hurled it high into the sky. An eagle happened to be circling in midair. Unable to dodge in time, it was smashed directly by the lion. My eyes glinted, instantly channeling the Ouroboros. Fuse! Black and white dual-colored light shot into the sky, tightly wrapping the eagle and the lion. Amidst agonizing shrieks, the lion's robust body and the eagle's wings and head were forcibly twisted together. When the light scattered, a deeply domineering griffin crashed to the ground. I flipped over and mounted the griffin's back, tugging at the feathers on its neck. Take me to see the show. The griffin let out a piercing eagle screech, flapped its wings, and shot into the high altitude. At this time, by the Silverfall River, to lure the ant across the river, Guy actually jumped into the water with his horse to act as bait. The giant ant, enraged after being shot with dozens of arrows, waded through the river water and charged after him. The Valerian family guards on the opposite bank were in total disarray. Shooting arrows at the ant didn't even count as scratching an itch. Just in the nick of time, an old horse charged out from the eastern bank. Sitting on horseback was none other than the old leader, Ulf, the one who could sense my existence. Clad in battered armor and wielding a heavy sword, he charged aggressively to the riverbank. The moment the giant ant reached the middle of the river, the old leader stepped on his horse's back and launched himself fiercely into the air. While in midair, gripping his sword with both hands, he used the terrifying momentum of his descent to deliver a vicious downward slash right at the giant ant's head. Clang! Could the strike, wagered with his life, break through the prehistoric behemoth's defenses? A crisp crack exploded. The old leader's heavy, life-risking cleave struck squarely on the giant ant's head carapace. The sword blade chipped and curled. The webbing between the old leader's thumbs and forefingers tore open completely, and he and his sword were bounced back to the shore, stumbling and almost falling. The giant ant, maddened by the pain, violently twisted its massive body and swept its front limbs across. The old leader forcibly twisted his waist in midair, slipped through the gap in the giant pincers, and backhanded another sword strike, hacking deeply into the ant's neck. Pale yellow fluid sprayed madly. The ant counterattacked desperately. Its massive mandibles snapped shut like a guillotine. The old leader couldn't dodge in time. He was bitten firmly at the waist and smashed into the river along with the giant ant. Fresh blood instantly gushed out, dyeing the Silverfall River red. Guy led his cavalrymen charging forward like madmen, swinging their iron swords and wildly hacking at the ant's hard shell. But they couldn't cut it open, let alone save the man. The Valerian army on the opposite bank looked on, dumbfounded. No one expected this old man, who had been quiet for years, to clash head-on with a prehistoric behemoth single-handedly. Just as everyone was at a loss, the sky suddenly darkened. Riding the griffin, I dive-bombed down from the cloud layer. Roar. The griffin unleashed an eagle's screeching roar that pierced the heavens. The giant ant, which had been thrashing violently just moments ago, was terrified into paralysis by the sound. It released its massive mandibles, flattened itself on the riverbank, and frantically played dead. Dead silence fell over the scene. The hundreds of people from both families were entirely cowed by this overwhelming aura. The dying old leader lay in a pool of blood, staring fixedly at me, using his last ounce of strength to shout, "Dare I ask, are you from the heavens beyond the heavens?" I channeled the source essence energy within my body. My voice exploded between heaven and earth like muffled thunder. "Yes, you said you are willing to receive divine punishment. Are you ready?" The old leader's face was full of fanaticism. He heavily patted his son's shoulder with his bloody hand. "The Ragnar bloodline is willing to receive divine punishment. Very good." I grabbed at the air from afar. An invisible massive hand instantly gripped the old leader and the ant playing dead, uprooting them entirely. Gale force winds reversed, the river water exploded, and I took the man and the beast straight into the sky, disappearing over the horizon in the blink of an eye, leaving behind only Guy, kneeling on the ground, crying his heart out. After flying away from the battlefield, I found a deserted clearing and directly channeled the Ouroboros. Fuse! Black and white dual-colored light shot into the sky, tightly wrapping the dying old leader and the ant. Amidst agonizing screams, the two bodies were forcibly twisted and reconstructed. When the light dissipated, the old leader stood up. The fatal piercing wound on his waist was completely gone. His entire person had grown to over 2 meters tall, covered in a tough layer of pitch-black insect armor. The outer side of his left arm had grown an oval bone shield, while his right arm had transformed entirely into a pair of serrated, razor-sharp twin blades. Feeling the explosive power within his body, he dropped to one knee with a thud, Thank you, God, for the grace of recreation. I threw him an ether crystal and issued a cold command. Do two things for me. First, find stones like this, the more the better. Second, when I'm not around, protect the Valerian family for me. Even if it's your own people causing trouble, you must suppress them. The old leader snatched the stone and stuffed it into his carapace, his eyes immediately turning crafty. The world under the heavens belongs to the gods. Since I am your servant, I will naturally go through fire and water for you. He raised his head, changing the subject. But winter is approaching, and the Ragnar family has no food. Thousands will soon starve to death. Could you bestow some food upon us? Just give us a bite to eat, and the entire tribe will sell their lives to you. I almost burst out laughing. This old fox, playing the empty-handed white wolf trick with me here. However, exchanging a little winter food for thousands of fearless barbarian laborers, this deal was far too cost-effective. I didn't answer him, directly withdrawing my projection and returning to the real world. How much food could over 20,000 miniature people, eating to their heart's content for an entire winter, possibly consume? I looked around and pulled over the bread packaging bag I had just finished eating from. There was still a layer of crumbs left inside. I also picked up an empty milk carton, which probably still had a dozen drops of milk clinging to the inside. For the miniature world, this was plenty. I didn't rush to feed them. I needed them to go hungry for a few days first. Delivering charcoal in the snow has the best effect. Time in the miniature world flowed at flying speed. A few days later, the old leader Ulf returned to his tribe. His heavy black armor and the miracle of his resurrection directly stunned the entire tribe. When he announced that the gods were about to bestow food, the entire Ragnar family completely boiled over. To survive, the 20,000 plus people braved the cold wind, digging pits on the prairie like madmen to find ether crystals. In just half a month, they scraped together over 100 for me. Seeing the timing was about right, I had the Griffin deliver a message, ordering them to dig 2 large pits to receive the food. The next day, amidst a snowstorm, Guy and Ulf led the entire tribe, eagerly guarding the sides of the 2 massive ice pits. The god descends. Everyone be quiet. With a loud roar from Guy, the high altitude suddenly darkened. My colossal figure blotted out the sun, and the entire dawnlight plains instantly fell into shadow. I pinched the bread bag, aimed it at one of the ice pits, and gave it a hard shake. Rumble. Golden breadcrumbs crashed down like meteorites, instantly filling a massive pit capable of fitting 100 people standing up. The rich aroma of wheat, accompanied by a sweet scent, exploded outward, making all the little people gulp down their saliva frantically. Next, I picked up the milk carton and poured it into the other large pit. To my eyes, it was just a dozen drops of residual milk, but to the miniature people, it was a milky white celestial waterfall. Whoosh! The milk smashed down wildly, filling the ice pit in the blink of an eye, turning it into a giant white pond. The overflowing fragrance of milk instantly shattered everyone's psychological defenses. My heavens, so much milk, divine food falling from the sky. Thank the gods for their grace. We don't have to starve to death. Over 20,000 people fell to their knees in unison, kowtowing madly toward the sky, their cries shaking the heavens and earth. With this wave of feeding, I thoroughly won over the hearts of the entire Ragnar family. Time continued to fast forward, and soon the ice and snow melted. Having survived the harsh winter, the Ragnar people not only didn't starve to death, but they grew plump and strong. Guy sent people pulling 2 large carts of breadcrumbs and dried cheese, swaggering over to the Valerian family's territory to demand an exchange for 10 bags of premium crop seeds and planting techniques. Luna, the newly appointed leader, stared straight-eyed at this soft food she had never even seen before. With just a casual inquiry, she found out that the Ragnar family, these boorish brutes, had actually managed to establish a connection with the gods too. Luna's mind spun extremely fast. Since the gods didn't favor either side, whoever could offer more ether crystals could exchange them for more divine grace. She made the decision on the spot, handing over the techniques, and then directly issued an order. The entire tribe is to cease all non-essential labor. Even if we don't farm, you will dig for ether crystals like your lives depend on it. The movements of these 2 families couldn't possibly be hidden from the Navarre family to the north. The clever Sylvia directly tore off her disguise. She issued a notice, forcibly organizing a meeting, inviting Guy and Luna to the border at the Silverfall River to begin trilateral talks. This woman's methods were supreme. In just a few words, not only did she facilitate the first grand alliance in the history of the 3 tribes, but she also proposed that the year of my appearance be designated as Year 1 of the Divine Descent. The 3 families completely set aside their prejudices. The Valerian family provided food and lumber, the Ragnar family provided furs and manpower, and the Navarre family worked overtime to forge iron picks and shovels. The 3 great lords and all their people transformed into fanatical miners, digging all over the mountains and plains for ether crystals for me. Watching the little black dots swarming and moving frantically inside the miniature world, I smiled with satisfaction. In just one night, my source essence energy skyrocketed. At this rate, it wouldn't take a week for my life tier to break through again. I glanced at the wall clock. It was almost 8 o'clock. I had to go to the company to file a leave of absence request, and then swing by the market to buy a large sunshade tent to cover the courtyard and keep things out of sight. Going back and forth would probably only take a few hours. A little over a year would pass in the miniature world, so nothing major should happen. I covered the miniature world with a cardboard box, locked the courtyard gate, and took a taxi straight to the company. But I absolutely never expected that the little people would mine so ruthlessly they'd literally pierce the heavens. The 3rd year of the Divine Descent, the hot hottest day in August, Gareth, an old veteran of the Ragnar family, was fiercely smashing his iron pickaxe in a deep pit. To exchange for a set of iron armor for his youngest son, he had been digging continuously in this pit for 3 days. Thud! The iron pick shattered a layer of hard rock, and a bottomless black hole instantly appeared underneath. Before he could even get a clear look, a massive force suddenly darted out from the hole, biting down on the wooden handle of the pickaxe and forcibly dragging it down. What is that? Gareth was so frightened his hands ached severely. He turned and prepared to climb out of the deep pit. The next second, an eyeless monster covered in purple spots, with limbs as long and slender as a spider's, lunged violently from the black hole. The monster opened its blood-stained maw filled with fangs and bit firmly into Gareth's calf. Gareth's agonizing scream tore through the sky, and he was instantly dragged into the bottomless abyss. Immediately following, hundreds and thousands of the same purple-skinned monsters crawled madly out of the tunnel. It wasn't just the Ragnar family that had an incident. The pastures of the Valerian family, the mountainous regions of the Navarre family, everywhere the crystal mines had been dug too deep. They all turned into eruption vents for these subterranean monsters. Inside the council tent, the leaders of the 3 families stared at the monster corpses delivered to them, their scalps tingling. These purple-skinned monsters were highly toxic, bit anyone on sight, and possessed immense strength. The most terrifying part was that, according to scouts, the entire underground of the miniature world was their nest. The number of monsters wasn't in the thousands, but in the hundreds of thousands, or even millions. Guy made a prompt decision, taking on the role of supreme military commander for the 3 tribes. Sylvia allocated the weapons for all tribes, and Luna threw in her family's entire fortune, deploying the dragon-scale heavy cavalry composed of the Dracehorse's descendants. The allied forces of the 3 tribes began madly putting out fires everywhere. 120 heavily armored dragon-scale cavalrymen were invincible, and the Dracehorses were seeing red. Whenever they saw purple-skinned monsters, they charged up and trampled them madly. But there were simply too many monsters. Kill 1,000, and another 10,000 surged from underground. Even during one surprise attack, the tent where Sylvia was located was flipped over. This smartest woman in the world, in order to protect her retreating clansmen, had her shoulder bitten right through by a purple-skinned monster. She was severely injured and almost perished on the spot. Harsh winter descended, and heavy snow sealed the mountains. Food drastically diminished, and the warriors could only fight the monsters to the death on empty stomachs. Every day, hundreds or thousands of warriors were torn to shreds, and the casualty reports piled up as high as mountains. Luna, covered in blood, hacked a monster to death and leaned on her sword, looking despairingly at the sky. "Oh God, where are you exactly?" Sylvia, lying in a sickbed, looked at the blood-stained war reports in her hands and suddenly realized an extremely terrifying detail. Recently, the purple-skinned monsters had stopped attacking the outer villages, instead frequently appearing near the Silverfall River at the border of the 3 tribes, forcefully digging out a massive sinkhole. Guy, to eliminate the root of the problem, had already mobilized the entire elite main force of the 3 tribes over there, luring the tiger off the mountain. Their target is the home bases of our 3 tribes. Sylvia suddenly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, roaring hoarsely at the guards. "Go to the front lines. Tell the Grand Army to fall back and defend. Hurry!" But it was all too late. The intelligence of the underground monsters far exceeded their imagination. While the main army was tightly stalled at the Silverfall River, countless caverns quietly blasted open in the hinterlands of the 3 tribes, and the true main force of the monsters poured out in full strength. Around 1 p.m., I carried the folding sunshade tent, returning home drenched in sweat. Having been out for over 5 hours, the miniature world had just experienced nearly a year. I locked the courtyard gate, still wondering in my heart how many ether crystals the little people could have hoarded for me. With one pull, I lifted the cardboard box covering the glass cover, and the smile on my face instantly froze. The entire miniature world had lost its previous vibrant green. As far as the eye could see, there were only scorched, deep pits and continuous seas of blood. Through the glass, even without using a magnifying glass, I could clearly see the corpses littering the ground. I ripped open the glass side panel, disengaging the fast-forward state, grabbed the magnifying glass, and stared intently at the ground. Everywhere, there were slender monsters covered in purple spots. They were like locusts, swarming over the wooden houses and tents of the little people, biting madly. The headquarters of the 3 major families were engulfed in raging flames, and the women, children, and elderly left behind were suffering a brutal massacre. Where was the griffin? Where was Ulf? I had only been gone for a few hours, and these disgusting things had almost upended my harvesting grounds. A surge of nameless fury rushed straight to my crown. I clenched my fists tightly, the source essence energy throughout my body churning madly, causing my bones to emit a series of explosive pops. Daring to touch my people on my turf? Today, I will let you sewer rats see what a true natural disaster is. I transformed into a blinding beam of light and crashed directly into the miniature world. Right after landing, inside the Navarre Leader's stone building, I found Sylvia, still recovering from her severe injuries. Leaning on a crutch, she forced herself to stay conscious and reported to me. It turned out these subterranean monsters were extremely cunning. They deliberately showed weakness outside, luring the main forces of the 3 tribes all the way to the Silverfall River, and then directly dug holes to spawn troops from within the hinterlands of the 3 tribes, sneaking in for a massacre. If it weren't for Ulf and the Dracehorses fighting to the death to rescue them, these 3 territories would have been wiped out long ago. Even so, The Navarre family still had more than half of their ether crystals robbed. Sylvia knelt on the ground, crying as she asked for my punishment. I walked into the underground secret chamber and absorbed all 40 or so ether crystals she had protected with her life. My life tier directly spiked to C24. Surging source essence energy roamed within my body. I raised a finger, pouring the pure energy into Sylvia's body. Her pale face instantly regained its color, and her severely injured body was directly healed. You have done well enough. I looked at her and spoke coldly. Since leather armor can't stop the monster's teeth, then I will give you metal armor. I want these bugs exterminated to the last one. With that said, I soared into the sky, returning my consciousness to reality. To slaughter the subterranean monsters, I didn't need to go dig holes myself. I rummaged through my storage room for a dozen empty Fanta, Coca-Cola, and Sprite soda cans, using scissors to cut them all into aluminum fragments the size of pinky fingernails. This scrap metal was garbage in reality, but in the miniature world, it was the absolute top-tier, ultra-lightweight armor material. I opened the north glass panel, aimed at the open space of the Navarre family, and released my fingers. Rumble. Under the terrified yet fanatical gazes of everyone, 3 massive metal towers flashing red, orange, and green light descended from the heavens, directly smashing 3 large craters into the ground. This is the metal of the gods, lighter and harder than iron. Sylvia raised her arms high, roaring hoarsely, "Craftsmen, use it to arm our warriors." Thousands of blacksmiths' eyes turned red, and they madly rushed the piles of metal. Watching the scene, I smiled, turned around, took a bar of Dove milk chocolate from the fridge, broke off a large chunk, and threw it inside. The massive brown meteorite crashed down with a rich, sweet aroma. Sylvia swallowed hard and boldly went up to take a bite. This high-calorie, high-sugar, caffeine-laced modern industrial food directly blew out the taste buds of this native. This is a supreme delicacy bestowed by God. Eat it, kill all the monsters, and avenge our compatriots. Eating chocolate, wearing aluminum armor, the morale of the 3-tribe army instantly maxed out, and like they had been injected with chicken blood, they began a crazy counterattack. But I scanned the area and didn't see the griffin. Where did that bird go? I descended once more, following the griffin's faint aura, and found a massive sinkhole by the Silverfall River. A few lionesses were still guarding the entrance, pacing around anxiously. That stupid bird actually went into the monster's lair single-handedly. I leaped and jumped into the bottomless black hole. Upon landing, dense swarms of purple-skinned monsters lunged at me like mad dogs. I didn't even bother to use skills. Just punched them one by one, smashing them into mush, and conveniently pocketed the ether crystals they dropped. Fighting my way through the cavern, I finally saw the griffin in the deepest cave. It was stuck firmly in midair by some disgusting slime, unable to move. Thing hiding in the shadows, get the hell out here. I raised my hand and grabbed, the source essence energy instantly forming a translucent giant hand, fiercely slapping down toward the shadow in the corner. Boom! The slime in the corner surged madly, actually forming a giant hand to meet mine Hedon. The two forces collided, erupting into a terrifying shockwave, but my life tier was crank. I squeezed hard and directly popped the slime hand. Whoosh! A small object shot out from the shattered slime. I looked closely and was almost amused. After all that fuss, this so-called underground king was actually a blue-purple slime the size of a watermelon. It let out a weird screech, and the slime in the entire cavern instantly turned into a monstrous wave, lunging at me. All flash and no substance. I sneered and flicked my finger. A source essence beam directly pierced the giant wave, accurately hitting the slime's main body. Bang! The jelly-like body exploded into countless droplets on the spot. I channeled the Ouroboros, sucking all the residual source essence energy in the cavern completely dry. After saving the griffin, I grabbed a purple-skinned monster for a fusion experiment, only to discover that these monsters weren't natural creatures at all, but puppets catalyzed by the slime using source essence, completely incapable of fusion. Returning to reality, time in the miniature world flew by. Fighting a war required vast amounts of food. I took some corn seeds from the outside world and forcibly fused them with the barley seeds from the miniature world using the Ouroboros, creating a new crop with massive kernels and a hearty texture called golden wheat, rewarding it to the Valerian family for large-scale cultivation. Meanwhile, the blacksmiths of the Navarre family worked day and night, using the soda can fragments to forge a full 30,000 sets of full-body armor and sword and shield kits. Red was distributed to the Ragnar family, orange to the Valerian family, and green to the Navarre family. With weapons, armor, and logistics all ready, I decided to add more fuel to the fire. I opened a newly bought Western epic miniature figurine set and pulled out the titanium steel weapons inside the dragon-slaying halberd, the Sun Moon twin blades, and the Leviathan spear. These were top-quality, single-cast steel from modern manufacturing. In the cold weapon era, this was a higher dimensional suppression strike. I stabbed the 3 divine weapons into the plaza of the Ragnar family and had Ulf pass down an order: hold a martial arts tournament among the 3 tribes. The strongest warriors shall be rewarded with divine weapons. As soon as the news broke, the entire miniature world went crazy. After 10 days of bloody battles, Wallace claimed the dragon-slaying halberd. Luna, the leader of the Valerian family, and her younger brother Tristan took the Sun Moon twin blades. On the Ragnar family side, a commoner warrior named Drax, relying on the sheer ruthlessness he honed from fighting his way out of monster hordes, one battle after battle. This kid taking the championship wasn't the end of it. He actually pointed his finger at the current leader's nose and cursed, even challenging Ulf, boasting that he would slay a god. Boom! The over-12-turtle Ulf, clad in heavy insect armor, crashed onto the arena ring like a cannonball, even stamping 2 deep craters into the stone floor. Drax drew his sword and roared, hacking at him. Ulf didn't even try to dodge. He pinched the wooden sword with one hand, twisted his wrist, and the blade instantly shattered. Then, he punched Drax in the stomach, blasting him over a dozen meters away. With just this little bit of skill, you dare to clamor? Ulf walked over, step by step, leaving craters with each step, his killing intent surging to the heavens. His right arm's sharp, serrated ant mandibles violently sprang open, stabbing straight for the space between Drax's eyebrows. Just in the split second before the sharp blades pierced his skull, I instantly descended, effortlessly catching Ulf's wrist between just 2 fingers. Dead silence fell over the arena. The 10,000 warriors from the 3 tribes looked at me, appearing suddenly, and their scalps went numb. They fell to their knees in unison. God above, we welcome you. I ignored them, looked at Drax who had collapsed on the ground, sweating profusely, and grabbed the Leviathan spear stuck in the distance through the air, hurling it directly in front of Drax. Divine weapons are bestowed upon you for exterminate the subterranean monsters cleanly, and I will give you another heavy reward. After saying that, I directly ascended into the sky and vanished. I slept for the night, and by the time I woke up the next day, a year and a half had passed in the miniature world. During this period, the fully armed 24,000 strong allied army of the 3 tribes directly counterattacked the underground. After over a year of bloody tug-of-war battles, they finally cornered the main body of that slime in the deepest cavern underground. The slime went completely berserk, instantly erupting with thousands of tentacles from its boat's surface, whipping wildly at the allied forces like a sky full of phantom whips. Drax swung the Leviathan spear, holding the front line and madly tanking the hits Hedon. And the cunning Ulf, like a ghost without breath, flanked around to the side, his right arm's twin blades primed and ready, staring fixedly at the slime's vital point. While Drax endured the slime's frenzied sky-filling tentacles at the front, the old leader Ulf seized an opening and swung his serrated ant mandibles to launch a fatal sneak attack. That thing is very strong. As soon as Ulf's words fell, like a black cannonball, he violently broke through the sky full of tentacles, and the serrated ant mandibles on his right arm pierced straight into the slime's core. Boom! Accompanied by an agonizing scream, the slime's main body was directly impaled. This once impossibly arrogant underground king was finally pinned firmly to the rock wall. This bloody battle, which lasted a year and a half, concluded with the total victory of the 3 tribes' allied forces. The next morning, after waking up and washing up, I descended into the miniature world once more. At this time, the 3 tribes had entered the revelry of the autumn harvest. I rode the griffin, strolling along the Silverfall River, and happened to run into Sylvia leading a group of high-ranking officials to kneel in worship. I waved away the irrelevant personnel, leaving only her. Watching her skillfully start a fire and roast a fish, I casually injected a trace of source essence energy into the fish meat. Sylvia took a bite, and the delicious flavor and surging vitality made her eyes widen. Her adoration for me practically overflowed. I mounted the griffin and extended my hand to her. Do you like looking at the scenery? Get on, it'll take you for a flight. Sylvia was stunned. She became a leader at 17, and for 18 years, she had exhausted her heart's blood for her territory, not even having a single romance. Now, pulled onto the griffin by me and soaring into the clouds, with the gale blowing across her face, she was so frightened she hugged my waist tightly, tears streaming uncontrollably down her face. Thank you, thank you. After the flight ended, Sylvia took me to a heavily guarded pure aluminum cell in the back mountains. The slime, severely wounded by Ulf back then, was locked in here. I opened the box, and this thing actually tried to run. I directly pressed it firmly against the floor using source essence energy. Just as I was about to deal the killing blow, this blob of jelly actually squirmed and turned into a white-skinned, purple-eyed, blue-haired young girl. Don't attack. I can understand human speech. She pressed against the wall like a spread eagle, crying miserably as she yelled, I am the underground king, Groomy. As long as you spare me, I'll listen to whatever you say. Hearing her confession, I almost couldn't maintain a straight face. It turned out this thing was just a lump of clay that had absorbed source essence, and those purple-skinned monsters were all puppets she catalyzed using moles. Because I made the 3 tribes dig for ether crystals, stealing her food rations, she crazily retaliated. I put on a cold face to scare her. The ether crystals were mine to begin with. You stole my things and still dared to hurt my people? Groomy was so scared she dropped to her knees and kowtowed on the spot. I was wrong. As long as you let me eat my fill, I will absolutely obey you from now on. Looking at her pathetic appearance, I casually tossed her a piece of Dove chocolate. Groomy took a bite. Her eyes lit up instantly, and she directly transformed into my #1 lackey. I handed Groomy over to Sylvia, letting her act as a soulless labor machine. Sylvia, this woman, was also ruthless. She didn't let Groomy manufacture purple-skinned monsters. Instead, she had her use source essence energy to catalyze a type of vine, creating the ether vine, which could enhance the warriors' physiques. Groomy's daily job became eating golden wheat and chocolate soup like crazy, and then frantically producing ether vines like a transfer station. The former underground king was forcibly squeezed into an illegal sweatshop worker on a 247 schedule by Sylvia. Looking at Groomy's dark circles under her eyes, even I felt pity, but who told her to mess with the woman who had the best brains? To reward the 3 tribes, I bought a miniature city model online. Once the little people laid the foundation, I decided to give them something big. The 8th year of the Divine Descent, April 13th. Tens of thousands from the 3 tribes gathered by the Silverfall River. I lifted the glass cover, held the miniature city with both hands, aimed it directly at the foundation, and placed it down. Rumble. Massive hands tore through the clouds, blotting out the sun. A majestic ancient city crashed down like a miracle, seamlessly embedding into the foundation. My God, that's the god's true body. Too terrifying. Just a pair of hands is so big. Looking at my colossal, heaven-supporting hands, the little people were frightened out of their wits. Tens of thousands of people fell to their knees in unison like wheat being harvested, kowtowing madly. Even the habitually arrogant Drax trembled all over, gripping his Leviathan spear tightly just to keep from collapsing. I bestowed the city to the 3 tribes for joint governance, naming it Eden City, and used source essence energy to carve the names of the 6 founders onto the city walls. To help them establish a system, I threw in a bottle cap of 42-proof vodka, making these natives, who were used to drinking shoddy ale, experience heavenly bliss. I also cut up a mineral water bottle and a Mizone bottle into small pieces, bestowing them as unforgeable plastic currency, pushing the civilization of the miniature world forward by a massive leap. The 3 tribes were thriving, but I felt it was too peaceful. Without survival pressure, how could these little people desperately work for me to provide energy? Under the cover of night, I caught a moth larger than an ant, forcibly fused it with a mole using the Ouroboros, and quietly stuffed it into an abandoned tunnel of the purple-skinned monsters. A few months later, the autumn harvest was approaching. The wheat fields in the western hills suffered a devastating blow. A large number of terraced fields were flipped over directly from underground. Drax and Tristan went to exterminate it with divine weapons, but in less than half a day, the 2 were carried back covered in blood. A giant beast that can fly and burrow, Drax lay in the sickbed, gnashing his teeth. Its body is exactly the same as the purple-skinned monsters. Sylvia brought Groomy to the camp to investigate. Drax stared deadly at Groomy and roared, "It must be you, monster, secretly playing tricks. Your ambitions never died. You're full of crap. That's slander." Groomy stomped her feet in anger. "I can't even fly. How could I create a monster with wings?" Just as the 2 were arguing tit-for-tat, the earth outside the camp suddenly trembled violently. Boom! The ground suddenly ruptured, and a mutated giant purple-skinned monster with wings on its back burst out of the soil, directly overturning the tents. "Look, that wasn't me at all," Groomy shouted at the top of her lungs, shedding wild tears of grievance, her body almost melting into a puddle of mush. Drax sneered continuously, insisting that the purple-skinned monster destroying the wheat fields was Groomy's doing. Standing outside the glass cover, watching these little people argue, I almost laughed out loud. That monster had absolutely nothing to do with Groomy. It was a super soldier I fused from a mole and a flying insect using the Ouroboros. I named it Mothrat. This thing was huge, could dig holes, and had moth wings on its back. Right now, in the miniature world, the Mothrat was opening its blood-stained maw, frantically feeding in the wheat field. Over 20 fully armed warriors charged forward with spears. They couldn't even pierce its skin and were instead swatted away by the 7 or 8 with a twist of its body and a swipe of its claw. Groomy was furious, whipping out over a dozen blue-purple gelatinous tentacles, attempting to bind the Mothrat from all sides. The Mothrat was very cunning. It twisted its body, forcibly snapping a few tentacles, flapped its wings, burrowed into a hole, and slipped away safely. Over the next few months, the Mothrat implemented guerrilla tactics, hitting one place and moving to another. The warriors of the 3 tribes were tormented severely, but it also forced them to expand their patrols, improve their weapons, and never relax for a moment. I simply wanted to turn up the intensity for them. If things were too comfortable, how could their civilization develop? I needed source essence. In the blink of an eye, it was the 9th year of the Divine Descent. The craftsmen of the Navarre family finally created high-strength, repeating crossbows targeting aerial units. The Mothrat, intercepted and pursued by the 3 tribes, was shot into a pincushion by a flurry of arrows and died in a cavern. Watching the little people singing and dancing in Eden City, I nodded in satisfaction. The survival pressure brought by the Mothrat recently had caused the 3 tribes to burst forth with a massive wave of currency, and my available source essence directly spiked to C97. A slap must be followed by a sweet date. I turned and slipped into the kitchen, rummaging out some tomato, cucumber, and green pepper pepper seeds. With source essence surging at my fingertips, I forcibly modified these vegetable seeds, granting them a weak body tempering effect similar to the ether vine. I descended into the miniature world and threw the seeds to the leaders of the 3 major families, treating them as their phase 2 body tempering medicine. Without listening to their rainbow farts flattery, I directly transformed into white light and returned to my main body. Because my phone alarm went off, the second Ligeo blind box had arrived. I climbed over the courtyard wall and peeked outside. A FedEx truck was parked at the end of the alley. 6 couriers were grunting and puffing as they carried a giant box, exerting a tremendous amount of effort just to move it to my front gate. I jumped down the wall, snapped the packaging rope, hooked the box's groove with one hand, and instantly bulged the muscles in both my arms, forcefully dragging this box, which was 5 times larger than the previous one, into the courtyard. Pulling off the outer packaging, what entered my eyes were still the familiar metal base and glass cover. But this time, the terrain had completely changed. There was no Silverfall River, replaced instead by an extremely vast bay, surrounded by scattered landmasses, with the sea dotted by nearly 100 islands. I grabbed the magnifying glass and leaned in for a closer look, my heartbeat skipping a beat. The architectural style closely resembled medieval Europe. On the eastern continent, 2 groups of heavily armored knights were locked in a fierce battle. The brute leading them swung his sword, actually unleashing a visible arc of sword aura. Beside him, a few wizards wearing pointed hats waved their wooden staffs, directly raining down massive gusts of wind and hellfire. This was a fantasy world with magic. I looked up at the sky above. A thick layer of translucent source essence light streams was accumulated within the clouds, so dense it was almost dripping water. I reached out to grab it, but there was no reaction. Without touching this world's heritage relic, I couldn't directly harvest this source essence for free. I walked around the glass cover and found an ancient, profound eye pattern on the side of the base. This was the clue for this relic. Where to find it? Go inside and look. I took a deep breath and pressed my hand against the metal surface. My consciousness plummeted instantly. Bang! With a loud crash, my vision went black, followed by an extremely overpowering, fishy stench of seafood rushing straight to my crown. I looked down. I had smashed directly through the roof of a warehouse, sitting a whole crate of some unknown species of weird fish into meat paste. I yanked off an octopus tangled around my neck. Just as I was about to find a way to slip away, a hushed argument came from the corner. "Justin, are you setting me up? Didn't you say no one was competing for this cargo?" A grease-dripping, white-skinned noble cursed repeatedly while smashing 2 bags of gold coins into the chest of a scrawny young man. The skinny Justin smiled with a merchant's slickness. "Baron Wayne, this is a top-tier item I went to great lengths to acquire. If you don't want it, plenty of people are lining up for it." Baron Wayne impatiently flipped open the lid of the wooden chest next to him. I saw clearly what was inside the chest. An elf girl with fair skin and long, pointed ears, curled up into a ball in sheer terror. Could I tolerate this? I pushed off with my feet, shooting out like a cannonball. Just as Baron Wayne heard the wind, and before he could even turn his head, I had already smashed a punch into his fat stomach. The fat man let out a scream like a slaughtered pig, collapsing to his knees like a shrimp, vomiting out bile. Seeing the situation go south, Justin reached out to grab the elf in the chest. Smack! I delivered a huge backhand slap. The wind howled. Justin, along with his teeth, was slapped directly away by me, smashing heavily into a shelf. I scooped up the elf girl with one hand, tapped my toe, flipped out the rear window of the warehouse, and vanished into the alleys. Running to an isolated seashore, I put the elf girl down. This girl was visibly over 1.7 meters tall, with flaxen hair draped over her shoulders, looking breathtakingly beautiful. She looked at me timidly, thanked me, and said her name was Lilia, an island elf. Because she chased prey and swam too far, she was caught by a human merchant ship and sold as a slave. She kept her head down, repeatedly asking me what I wanted as a reward. I stared at her pinkish-white, pointed ears, feeling an itch in my heart. On these ears, there was a fluctuation of source essence energy. "Let me pinch your ears, and consider that as your reward," I stated directly. Lilia froze for a moment, her cheeks instantly turning completely red. Taking tiny steps, she was just about to lean closer. My brows furrowed fiercely, staring intently at a massive rock in the distance. "Get the hell out here." My sharp shout, infused with source essence energy, caused the water surface to explode into a line of water columns. Justin, hiding behind the rock, walked out trembling. Half of his face was swollen high, air leaking from his mouth. "Please don't attack. It's me." I stared at him coldly. "Followed me all the way here wanting to snatch her back?" Justin fell to his knees with a thud, laying all the coin purses he just collected onto the ground. "Great, Mr. Wizard. I'll give all this money to you. I beg you to take me as your apprentice and teach me magic." I almost burst out laughing. He called my kind of violent physical output magic? I have no interest in money, I refused expressionlessly. Justin became anxious, gritting his teeth and saying, "Besides money, I also possess intelligence on the 4 great kingdoms of the bay, as well as the secret to the survival of the island elf tribe. As long as you accept me, I am willing to be your loyal hound." "A loyal hound? Just saying it with your mouth isn't enough. I raised my right hand, aimed it from afar at a rock cave by the coast, and grabbed fiercely. Squeak! A bat was yanked over through the air and smashed directly onto Justin's back. I violently channeled the Ouroboros within my body. Black and white streams of light erupted with a boom, tightly wrapping Justin and the bat. The rules of the Bay world were rejecting me, and my available source essence instantly dropped by a huge chunk, but I forcibly withstood the rejection and completed the fusion. The light dissipated. Justin lay on the ground gasping heavily, black fine lines crawling across his neck. He violently arched his back, and with a rip, a pair of massive bat wings tore through his clothes. Feeling the surging power within his body, Justin trembled with excitement, kowtowing his head onto the ground. "Teacher, I am willing to give my all for you." It was done. In this unfamiliar world, I had my first useful chess piece, a vampire servant. I had him write down the intelligence on the various kingdoms, and then took Lilia to settle down. I directly transformed into a beam of light, soared into the sky, and returned to my main body. Lying on the sofa, I sorted through the intelligence Justin gave me. The Bay world was divided into 4 great kingdoms: Storm, Thunder, Gloom, and Silvermoon. The most mysterious Silvermoon kingdom was filled with transcendence everywhere. That heritage relic shaped like an eye was very likely hidden there. Relying on a newly minted vampire under my command to go rob a relic from the Silvermoon kingdom was pure dreaming. I needed more manpower. I turned to look at the quiet Eden City world next to it. It was also a Ligeo blind box with the same height and matching dimensions. What would happen if I connected them? No sooner said than done. I stood up, gripped the first base with both hands, and pushed it bit by bit toward the Bay world. I precisely aligned the Dawnlight planes with the western edge of the Bay world. Click. I slid open the isolation glass panels on both sides. Hiss. With a soft sound, the air between the two worlds boomed through. The boundless seawater of the Bay world flowed backwards, directly pouring into the Dawnlight plains and connecting with the Silverfall River. I leaned in to watch the reactions within the miniature world. On the eastern prairie, the women washing clothes were drenched to the bone by the crashing waves. When they lifted their heads and saw that endless, boundless ocean, they collapsed directly onto the ground in terror. When the news reached Eden City, the high echelons of the 3 tribes completely exploded. Drax pointed at the slime Groomy's nose and cursed, insisting that it caused the Great Flood. Sylvia was the calmest, slamming the table to stabilize the situation, and dispatched the Griffin to scout over the sea. A few days later, the Griffin brought back news of ships on the sea. Guy, a warmonger whose blood burned in his bones, secretly built a few wooden rafts and led men out to conquer the sea. The result was a wave crashing over them, dumping them all into the water to drink their fill. If Groomy hadn't supported them from the bottom of the water, they would have all fed the fishes. For these primitive people to attempt a grand maritime voyage was simply serving themselves on a platter. I pressed my hand against the surface and descended once more. I threw the blueprints of modern naval ships that I had memorized onto Sylvia's desk. The portal between the two worlds will soon close. I stared into her shocked eyes. In 2 years, when the portal reopens, the foreign races across the sea will definitely attack. Whether you can survive depends on your own fortune. With that said, I didn't even give her a chance to ask questions, directly escaping in a flash of white light. Remaining in place, Sylvia looked at the impossibly complex keel blueprints in her hands, her eyes gradually turning fanatical. She immediately summoned 100 top master craftsmen, held a meeting with my blueprints, and forcibly injected chicken blood into the 3 tribes to crazily build warships. Closing the portal allowed the Eden City world to develop on its own at an accelerated pace. I yawned and went to my bedroom to sleep. The next morning, after washing up and frying an egg, I scrolled through my phone while eating. Opening Reddit's fantasy board, the blind box comment section had completely blown up. A trending post was pushed to the top, its title extremely arrogant. Opening luxury goods in a blind box is crap? Come see the virtual reality VR console I got. The poster's ID was Saint Gatling Sungjaterlin, real name Leo. The post included a dozen screenshots. I only took one look, and the egg in my hand dropped directly onto the table. Medieval streets, a bustling harbor, sailboats floating in the distance. Wasn't this headwind port in the Bay world? Leo was updating his post like crazy. Brothers, this game is amazing. 100 realistic pain sensation. It's just that I don't understand a single word these NPCs are saying. Begging for a language patch. I zoomed in on the pictures, staring intently at the perspective of the screenshots. This guy had actually connected into my Bay world as a player through the same model of Ligeo blind box equipment. He had become this world's 4th scourge. How could I allow this? If I let him develop in my territory and snatch the heritage relic first, what kind of ruler would I be? I threw down my phone, strode over to the glass cover, pressed my hand on the base, and forcibly descended. Bang! The familiar loud crash, the familiar fishy stench. I held my nose and stood up, looking at the newly smashed hole above my head, and the crate of seafood beneath me that had once again been sat into meat paste. I had actually smashed into the exact same warehouse. Because my body carried the Ouroboros from another world, the Bay world's rejection had forcibly locked my drop point right here. The fury furious curses of the shipowners came from outside the door. I flipped out the back window into the streets, following the bloodkin contract connection between Justin and me, tracking him down all the way. In the wealthy district of Headwind Port, I stopped in front of a grand two-story, Western-style house. Just as I was about to enter, a burly man built like an iron tower blocked my path. "Are you blind? This is a private residence. Get lost." The burly man, whose face was full of aggressive flesh, squeezed his fists and threatened me. I ignored his trash talk, my eyes narrowing slightly. This guy actually had a faint flow of source essence energy in his body, roughly equivalent to the level of a twice-tempered divine kingdom warrior. "You've eaten ether crystals?" I directly reached out and pointed at his abdomen. "Don't touch me." The burly man was enraged, pushing his hands forcefully toward me. Bang! His big dark hands pushed against my chest, but I didn't budge an inch. He himself was instead flipped back 3 steps by the rebound force, his back slamming against the wall, grimacing in pain. Again, refusing to believe it, he tried to lunge at me again. The main door was violently pushed open, and Justin, wearing a crisp swallowtail coat, rushed out. "Teacher, why are you here?" Justin glared fiercely at the burly man. "Stand down." Justin welcomed me into the living room, served black tea, and respectfully reported that he had already forged a noble identity for Lilia, and this house was her residence. I took a sip of tea, picked up the paper and pen on the table, and with a few swift strokes, sketched out the appearance of the player named Leo. "Go around the port and find this person." I pushed the portrait to Justin, my voice icy. "Find him, kill him, make it a clean job." A trace of ruthlessness flashed in Justin's eyes. He directly folded the paper and stuffed it into his coat. "Understood." Next, I also drew the eye-shaped pattern of the heritage relic. "Also this pattern. Use all your resources to track down its whereabouts." Having assigned the tasks, I was just about to get up and head upstairs to check on Lilia's condition. Right then, a loud boom suddenly came from the second floor. The floorboards beneath our feet trembled violently, and a large amount of dust crashed down from the ceiling. My expression changed drastically. My legs pushed off with sudden force, shattering the marble floor tiles with a bang, and my entire body transformed into an afterimage as I dashed to the second floor. Justin also ripped through the back of his clothes, unfurled his bat wings, and flew up. I kicked down the teetering bedroom door. The sight before me made me clench my fists tightly. Lilia, wearing loose silk pajamas, was standing barefoot beside the bed. Her eyes were glazed over, and her right hand still maintained a posture of grabbing forward into the void. And directly in front of her fingers, the half-meter-thick load-bearing stone wall between the bedroom and the study had been forcefully shoved into a floor full of crushed gravel by an invisible, terrifying giant force. Justin's eyes went wide, and he swallowed hard in terror. Is this mage hand? She only watched you use it once yesterday, and she learned it today." Lilia stood barefoot amidst the crushed gravel, her head bowed, 2 fingers nervously twisting together. Blushing intensely, she apologized repeatedly, terrified I'd make her pay for the wall. "Don't trouble yourself," I spoke indifferently. With a wave of my large hand, an invisible current of source essence burst from my body, precisely wrapping around every single piece of broken brick and shattered tile on the floor. The next second, the floor full of debris flew directly into the air, seamlessly stacking back together layer by layer. The entire scene was like hitting a rewind button. Even the wooden door I had just kicked down was restored to perfect condition. Justin turned to stone on the spot, looking at me as if he were looking at God. He simply didn't understand that for someone like me, who had turned wielding source essence into muscle memory, this was no different from building blocks. I turned to Justin, issuing a direct command. "Go investigate the intelligence regarding the attack on the island elves. If it's false intelligence, lay a white cloth on the roof. If it's true, lay a red cloth. You have 3 days. Can you do it?" Justin abruptly straightened his back, patting his chest and guaranteeing the mission would absolutely be accomplished. I nodded in satisfaction, turned and walked to the balcony, transformed into a beam of light, shot into the sky, and returned directly to my main body. Back in the outside world, I turned to look at the frantically accelerating Eden City world next to it. Inside, it had already reached the 11th year of the divine descent. The shipbuilding blueprints I casually tossed in back then had been played to perfection by these little people. On the Silverfall River, dozens of warships were drilling. The outer layer of the hulls was completely wrapped in silver aluminum skin cut from soda cans. Crash-resistant, waterproof, and lightweight, these blacksmiths were true geniuses. The autumn harvest was drawing to a close. The warriors of the 3 tribes were all robust and their horses strong, and food was piled up like mountains. It was time to harvest a wave of Faith Leak's easy prey. I pressed my hand onto the metal base of the first blind box, channeling the Ouroboros. The thick source essence accumulated in the clouds for years surged frantically into my body like a whale inhaling water. The available source essence skyrocketed from C98 to the limit. Boom! My internal organs suddenly emitted a deep, muffled rhythm. My bones cracked and popped, and my muscles vibrated at a high frequency. An invisible wave of air exploded from my body, sending the sunshade tent in the courtyard shaking wildly. Brank lifeform, breakthrough. I comfortably exhaled a breath of foul air. Slightly opening my eyes, my vision was actually so strong that I didn't need a magnifying glass to clearly see the antennae of every single ant in the miniature world. Awesome! This was a true God's eye view. I turned and went to the kitchen to make a meat-filled flatbread. While munching on it, I took out my phone and opened the Twitch streaming platform. The player named Leo had just posted a new update. A few minutes ago, this kid excitedly put on his VR headset, ready to go on a killing spree in the Bay world, while conveniently directing traffic to his streaming channel. He walked on the stone streets of Headwind Port, happily taking screenshots to post. But just as he turned into a narrow alley, four local thugs with aggressive faces blocked his path completely. Leo opened his mouth to curse, but the system had no language patch, so all the sounds he roared out were just ABA ABA. The lead thug, Paige, picked at his ear, a look of utter disgust on his face as he spat on the ground. "This is the fat sheep Justin wanted us to find?" His underling nodded repeatedly. Without another word, Paige drew the short sword at his waist and delivered a backhand sweeping slash. Blood fountained wildly from the major artery in Leo's neck. Clutching his throat, he retreated frantically. The intense, realistic pain shot straight to his brain, and the screen before his eyes instantly went black. In the real world, Leo ripped off his VR headset, collapsing on the floor panting madly in terror, cold sweat soaking his clothes completely. Trembling, he grabbed his phone and posted 3 words. "I died." Looking at the screen, I almost spat out the meat bread in my mouth. Justin's efficiency in getting things done was truly absolutely brilliant. Jokes aside, I turned to glance at the Bay world, and my brows furrowed fiercely. Inside Headwind Port, a full 30+ warships were setting sail at full mast. Looking again at the small Western-style house Justin bought, the roof was already covered in a layer of blinding red cloth. The intelligence was true. The Storm Kingdom was really going to mobilize its troops. This fleet was massive, and the flagship leading it was absurdly huge. Standing on the bow deck were 3 people: the overindulgent 7th Prince, the heavily armored Storm's first knight Nicholas Cage, and the staff-wielding Witch Meg. But looking at the direction they were sailing, they weren't going to attack the deep-sea elves at all. They were heading straight for the borderline of the portal between the 2 worlds. Damn it, they were eyeing my Eden City world. The Bay world must have used some kind of detection magic to discover the anomaly of the 2 worlds briefly connecting earlier. Moreover, from their scouting perspective, all they saw were the broken wooden rafts Guy secretly paddled out to sea back then. So, these medieval bumpkins really thought that across the sea was a primitive civilization waiting to be slaughtered. I immediately reached out and pressed the base, forcibly descending into the Eden City world. The beam of light landed, smashing directly next to the shipyard outside the city. A few half-grown kids were grunting as they carried aluminum plating to assemble a warship. "War is coming soon, are you afraid?" I asked casually. The leading Valerian girl raised her chin, her face full of pride. "Not afraid. The Lord God bestowed food and iron armor upon us. Whoever dares to come rob us, we will kill them." Hearing this made my heart swell with extreme satisfaction. I casually scattered a bit of source essence energy to merge into the children's bodies, then turned and walked into the central palace. Luna was sitting in the leader's grand chair, revising documents. In the 11th year of the divine descent, this girl was already 26. She had shed her earlier immaturity, and her brow was filled with capable, murderous intent. The enemy has 30 warships, 4 to 5,000 troops, wizards who can cast magic, and knights who can hack out sword aura. I directly laid out all the cards for her. Luna's pen tip paused. Not only did she not panic, but she sneered. "Lord God, their disadvantage is that they don't know our bottom line at all. Our advantage is that in aluminum armor, heavy crossbows, and food, we comprehensively crush them." Good. I nodded. "A month from now, the portal reopens. Hit them hard for me." With my instructions given in a flash of white light, I directly retreated back to the outside world. On the Bay world side, the storm fleet sailed with the wind at full mast, having already approached the end of the northwestern seas. The wizard Lennon leaned on the flagship's railing, pointing forward and yelling excitedly, "Look, the new continent is about to appear." The 7th Prince rubbed his hands in excitement, and the knights didn't even bother putting on their armor, grabbing their iron swords and preparing to go ashore to kill natives and snatch women. Standing outside the glass cover, the corners of my mouth curled into a cold sneer. Gripping the isolation glass between the 2 worlds with both hands, I yanked it upwards fiercely. Rumble. The 2 worlds were completely connected. The backwards flowing seawater churned up a sky-filling mist, pulling out a massive 7-colored rainbow in midair. Everyone in the storm fleet stared fixedly behind the rainbow. The water mist dissipated, revealing absolutely no broken wooden rafts, but a full few dozen blindingly shiny silver aluminum-plated armored warships. On the decks, densely packed Divine Kingdom warriors stood fully armed. Wearing fully enclosed aluminum helmets and holding refined steel weapons, rows of giant heavy crossbows had already cranked their bowstrings tight. The crossbow bolts flashed with a dark blue, chilling light, pointed straight at the storm flagship. The lewd smile on the 7th Prince's face instantly froze, and his eyeballs almost popped out. He grabbed the wizard Lennon by the collar, roaring hysterically, "Are you fucking blind? This is a primitive civilization. Tell me, how is this a fucking primitive civilization?" Lennon was so terrified he literally peed his pants, his legs going soft and trembling nonstop. The expression of the storm's first knight, Cage, changed wildly. He drew his heavy sword and roared, "Everyone, armor up. First-degree combat readiness." The unarmored knights, scared out of their wits, scrambled and crawled into the cabins to grab their gear. On the aluminum-plated warship opposite them, Sylvia stood on a high platform, her eyes cold as blades. "Ready, fire!" Wallace roared with his broken gong voice. Thrum, thrum, thrum. The winches released, and hundreds of arm-thick heavy crossbow bolts tore through the air, carrying terrifying whistling sounds as they instantly crossed the sea and smashed violently into the Storm Fleet's formation. The wooden hulls were pierced through on the spot like paper mache, with splinters flying everywhere. The Storm Knights blocking at the front raised their refined steel great shields to hold the line, only to have the heavy crossbows explode both man and shield on the spot, their hands blown into a bloody mist. In the first volley, the deck of the Storm Fleet was directly cleared by nearly half, fresh blood dyeing the seawater dark red. "Don't kill me! Don't kill me!" The seventh prince hugged his head and shrank behind a wooden barrel, shivering like a quail. The wizard Lennon tried to use magic power to forcefully block a crossbow bolt, only to have a broken half-arrow pierce straight through his thigh, screaming like a slaughtered pig as he lay on the deck. Cage cleaved through 3 crossbow bolts aimed at his face with one swing of his sword, tearing the webbing of his hands. He suddenly turned and roared at the witch Meg. "Suppress them! Hurry!" Meg bit the tip of her tongue, raising her staff high. Behind her, 20 apprentice wizards simultaneously raised their wooden staffs and chanted, "Water spirits, heed my command! 8th tier magic ultra-boiling sea." Massive magic power blasted into the seabed. The originally calm surface of the sea instantly boiled madly like boiling water, countless undercurrents turning into whirlpools that directly tossed the Divine Kingdom's frontline warships back and forth. The warriors were thrown rolling all over the place, and their formation instantly fell into chaos. Seeing this, Cage was overjoyed. Charge over. Boarding action. Watching this wave of spell crowd control inside the miniature world, my eyebrow twitched. This magic system really had some substance. But Sylvia didn't panic at all. She stomped fiercely on the deck, shouting violently into the water below, "Groomy, do it!" The blue-purple slime lurking in the deep sea instantly went berserk. Groomy's main body expanded to the limit. Countless thick gelatinous tentacles, like the arms of a deep-sea kraken, burst out of the water with a boom, tightly wrapping around the keels of dozens of aluminum-plated warships. "Get over there!" Groomy let out a muffled roar at the bottom of the water. All the tentacles exerted force simultaneously, forcibly dragging the warships out of the boiling whirlpools and hurling them like a slingshot fiercely toward the Storm Fleet. Bang, bang, bang. The intense sound of metal crashing against wood rang out across the sea. Relying on their terrifying hardness, the aluminum-plated warships directly crashed into the Storm ships, caving in their hulls and snapping their keels. "Kill the invaders!" Luna and Guy took the lead, stepping on the ship's gunnels and leaping up, charging directly onto the enemy deck. The Divine Kingdom warriors lunged into the crowd of Storm Knights like ravenous wolves and tigers, every blade drawing blood, every punch hitting meat. On the flagship's deck, just as Cage stabilized himself, a massive dragon-slaying halberd carrying an ear-piercing wind howl cleaved down right at the top of his skull. "Invader, die!" Wallace's beard and hair danced wildly, looking just like an enraged old lion. Clang! Cage raised his shield to take the hit heeding. The solid wood deck beneath his feet was shattered inch by this monstrous force, and the entire left half of his body instantly went numb. What immense strength! A trace of ruthlessness flashed in the depths of Cage's eyes, and he immediately activated Berserk mode. From behind, Meg waved her staff continuously. Dragon skin, inspire, heroism, tremor sense. For magical streams of light smashed onto Cage. Cage himself also growled madly. Brain liberation, mental fortification, steel bracers. His muscles instantly expanded, bursting the sleeves. Cage's eyes turned blood red, and his speed skyrocketed. He ducked low to dodge the great halberd, his heavy sword turning into an afterimage, directly stabbing through the aluminum armor on Wallace's abdomen. Wallace sprayed a mouthful of fresh blood, lifting his leg in a flying kick to force Cage back, and backhanded the giant halberd embedded in the pillar. Cage did not let up. A sonic boom exploded beneath his feet. Ground shrink. His entire person closed in on Wallace like a teleportation. Blade and sword clashed madly, sparks flying in all directions. The fully buffed Cage had off-the-charts combat power, directly suppressing the 4 times tempered Wallace. "It's over, old man." Cage smashed Wallace down with his shield, raised his heavy sword high, and slashed viciously toward his neck. Clang! A thick Leviathan spear thrust out across the sky, accurately parrying the heavy sword. The formidable force split Cage's hands, spraying blood, and the long sword nearly slipped from his grasp. "You can't even hack an old bag of bones to death. You've got a lot of water in your title as the first knight." Drax stood in front of Wallace with a sinister grin. The terrifying pressure of 5 times tempering blasted outwards. Cage stepped back 3 paces, looking at the slaughtered Storm Knights all over the ground. His heart sank completely to the bottom. He couldn't win, he absolutely couldn't win. This group of monsters opposite him not only had better equipment, but their stamina seemed endless. He abruptly turned his head and growled at Meg. "You'll hold them off. You fly back to the capital immediately to report. The Storm Kingdom has kicked an iron plate." Meg crushed her back molars and silently chanted a spell. Cage completely burned his life force, blinding bloodlight erupting from the surface of his body. Steel skin, absolute power boost, like a wild bull. He actively crashed toward Drax, using his heavy shield to firmly tank the Leviathan spear, creating an earth-shattering boom. Taking advantage of this opportunity, a pair of dazzling wings of light suddenly unfurled from Meg's back. Her feet stomped fiercely on the deck, and like a rocket, she shot into the high sky. Running, "Get your ass down here." Wallace endured the severe pain in his abdomen, leaping into the air to hack with his halberd. Cage firmly took a hit from Drax and backhanded a sword slash, instantly instant reflex, 5-strike collapse slash, 5 and sword auras sliced through the air, directly hitting the Midair Wallace, tearing open the flesh of his left shoulder and thigh, and smashing him heavily back onto the deck. Drax was completely enraged. The Leviathan spear turned into an afterimage, piercing madly. Cage fought desperately to parry, ultimately using his longsword to unleash an absolute killing strike. Severing blade, the terrifying sword aura forced Drax back 10 meters. Without any hesitation, Cage executed a barrel roll over the gunnel, plunging into the deep sea with a splash, and instantly vanished without a trace. Bastard! Drax rushed to the side of the ship, so angry he punched through the railing. Holding his wounds, Wallace sat on the ground, looking at Meg flying further and further away, his face full of unwillingness. Watching this scene from the sky, the corners of my mouth curled into a cold sneer. Running? Did you ask me? Meg, flying in midair, was just celebrating her narrow escape when she suddenly heard a piercing eagle's cry from above. She abruptly looked up, only to see a massive monster with an eagle's head and a lion's body tucking its wings and dive-bombing toward her like a fighter jet. What the hell is that thing? Meg was scared out of her wits, tapping her staff repeatedly. Arcane sight, greater mage armor. The instant the shield lit up, the griffin crashed fiercely into her chest. Bang! The magical armor shattered on the spot. Meg coughed up blood heavily like a kite with a broken string, plummeting at extreme speed toward the sea. Just as she was about to be smashed into meat paste, she desperately waved her staff. Feather fall. Her body came to a sudden halt 1 meter above the water. Following that, she smashed her necklace hard into midair. Heavy fog. Intense white fog exploded instantly, blocking the griffin's line of sight. The griffin angrily tore through the fog, its sharp claws scratching wildly. Meg took the opportunity to dive headfirst into the deep sea, fleeing frantically, relying on underwater breathing spells. A few minutes later, Meg crawled up onto the sandy beach of an isolated, desolate island. She was completely soaked, looking as miserable as a drowned dog, just preparing to cast a spell to dry her clothes. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy footsteps echoed from the woods ahead. Meg's body hair stood on end, and she sharply raised her head. A man wearing a black cloak, with a figure as massive as an iron tower, was slowly stepping out of the shadows. Beneath the cloak, a pair of ice-cold eyes locked onto her deaden. The old leader Ulf cracked his neck, producing crisp popping sounds like roasted beans. Your journey home ends here. Want to live? Then show me the caliber of this so-called magic of yours. Seeing that trying to get close to him wouldn't work, Meg brought out her trump cards without a second word. She forcefully stabbed her staff into the ground. The earth instantly churned, and a terrifying suction force, like a quagmire, attempted to trap Ulf to death. Immediately after, the sea exploded, and dozens of thick water whips soared into the air, tightly binding Ulf's 4 limbs. And that wasn't all. Meg waved her staff, conjuring an extremely dry bubble that flew straight for Ulf's face. This thing was called a dehydration bubble. Once trapped inside, it would instantly suck dry the moisture in the body, turning a person into a dried husk. A combo of moves, flowing like water and moving clouds. I watched with great interest from beyond the heavens. But Ulf didn't even bat an eyelid. In the face of absolute physical strength, flashy spells were just a joke. His legs suddenly exerted force, and he stomped fiercely. The hard rock ground cracked and collapsed on the spot, and the so-called earth binding was directly pulverized. Then, with a shake of his arms and a few crisp snap sounds, the highly resilient water whips were forcibly torn apart. Facing the incoming dehydration bubble, Ulf raised his right hand. Source essence energy instantly turned into an invisible giant hand, and with a bang, he popped it on the spot. Meg's soul scattered in fear. She turned, spread her wings of wind, and tried to run. Ulf grabbed the empty space, seized her by the neck, and pressed her hard into the ground, dragging her. If you want to live, do everything in your power to show your value before the god. I had been coveting this old witch's signature trick of pulling things out of thin air via the dimensional bag for a long time. Shifting the viewpoint, the naval battle had completely wrapped up. The Storm Kingdom's naval fleet was beaten into total annihilation, debris scattering the sea. Just as I was preparing to pop champagne to celebrate the victory of the first battle, I picked up my phone to scroll and froze. Leo's Twitch streamer account had actually posted an update. This guy died in the game and could actually respawn. I clicked open the update and saw a screen full of photos of a medieval fishing village. Not only did this kid not die, but he was hiding in an old fisherman's house, lustfully secretly photographing the fisherman's daughter, trying to farm traffic right here. Good heavens, playing Impure World Reincarnation with me. Huh? I directly descended into the Bay World, landing straight at the alley where he was killed earlier. He left behind a black and white strand of hair. It seemed respawning wasn't without a price. This kid probably burned through some of his lifespan. I drew a sketch and tossed it to my subordinate Justin. Go find this woman and keep a dead stare on that player named Leo. Remember, don't make a move. Variables must be held in the palms of our hands and played with slowly. With arrangements made, I needed to check out the front lines. Walking to the edge of a cliff, I found a towering tree and flicked out 2 streams of source essence energy. Like sharp blades cut cutting. With a crack, the thickest section of the trunk cleanly dropped off. I hoisted it up single-handedly, aimed toward the deep sea in the northwest, and hurled it fiercely. I leaped onto the trunk. The tree trunk acted like a heavy torpedo, skimming the surface of the sea as it sped furiously, slicing through waves. This speed was countless times faster than any bullcrap warship. In no time, I descended onto the island occupied by the Divine Kingdom. The little people were gathered around bonfires, celebrating, eating large chunks of meat, and chugging vodka. The commander-in-chief, Sylvia, upon seeing me, immediately handed over the battle report. The overall situation was settled, but there was a troublesome issue. The leading storm knight, Cage, taking dozens of defeated stragglers, hid in the deep water to wage a guerrilla war, madly ambushing our patrol boats. These water ghosts were extremely slippery, causing the Divine Kingdom warriors to go without a peaceful night's sleep. I raised an eyebrow. Underwater operations? Don't we have a ready-made child laborer for that? I walked to the adjacent tent, where the blue-haired lowly Groomy was lying spread-eagle on a stone slab, playing dead. Hearing me enter, she didn't even lift an eyelid. I directly condensed an invisible giant hand and gave her a slap right on the forehead. Wah! Groomy screamed and got up, pitifully holding out her limp, soft arms to complain, saying all her tentacles were severed during the battle, and now her whole body hurt. I poured source essence energy into her body, helping her reconnect her broken meridians. This little thing felt so comfortable she directly melted into slime jelly, wrapping tightly around me. I flicked her away with a finger to the forehead, saying testily, "Cut the crap. Follow the warships tomorrow to catch them. If you capture them alive, I will reward you with a mouthful of supersized delicacy you have never eaten before." Hearing about food, Groomy's eyes instantly shot out green light, drool almost flowing out, and she made a military pledge on the spot. Having settled the laborer, I turned to interrogate the prisoner. Ulf guarded Meg like a door god. Meg knelt on the ground, her eyes darting around, unwilling to accept her fate. This old woman secretly muttered spells, casting 3 layers of detection spells on herself in a row, wanting to see through my secrets. I saw it but didn't call her out. Standing openly in place, I directly released the full energy coercion of a brank lifeform. Ah! Meg let out a shrill scream, her eyes instantly covered in blood vessels, tears shooting out wildly, and she directly covered her eyes, convulsing on the ground. To look directly at a star with the eyes of an ant, she was lucky not to go blind. "What did you just see?" I asked, looking down at her. Meg's soul scattered in fear, her voice shaking like a sieve. "Light, an extremely dazzling light, an unimaginable burning sensation. You possess incomparably terrifying magic power." I nodded in satisfaction, pointing at her. "I am very interested in your magic trick of pulling things out of thin air. Demonstrate it for me." How could Meg dare disobey? Trembling, she extended her left hand and drew a circle in the air. Amidst rippling water, a translucent dimensional bag rift appeared. Stuffed inside were gold coins, gemstones, and handfuls of ether crystals. Just as she was about to withdraw the spell to close the rift, I directly reached out both hands, left and right, and firmly grabbed the edges of the dimensional bag. Meg's eyeballs almost popped out, her worldview collapsing on the spot. This was her personal space. How could an outsider forcibly interfere? I grinned, and both my arms suddenly exerted force. With a muffled boom, crack, the void was forcibly ripped to shreds by me. The entire dimensional bag exploded on the spot, and the treasures, magic stones, and thick spell tomes inside clattered to the ground. Oops, my bad. I didn't expect it to be so fragile. I clapped the dust off my hands, pointing at the loot covering the floor. "These things are mine now, you have no objections, right?" Meg's face turned green, but under Ulf's man-eating gaze, she could only swallow her tears. No objections. Having obtained the spatial magic I wanted, I turned to interrogate the 7th Prince of the Storm Kingdom and his accompanying wizard, Lennon. The 7th Prince was a complete coward and had already wet himself and passed out from terror long ago. Lennon, however, was an extremely shrewd guy. As soon as he saw me, his knees went soft, and he slid to a kneel on the spot. "Great God, I am a blind fool. The Storm Kingdom should not have offended your majesty." This kid had sharp eyes. Catching a glimpse of the spell book personally written by Meg in my hand, he instantly understood that even the chief which had fallen. He immediately changed his tune, frantically kissing up. "Lord God, your grand army is invincible. But if you forcibly assault the Storm Kingdom's mainland, there will inevitably be casualties. Why not change your perspective? How about using this useless 7th Prince lying on the ground? Let him go back to inherit the throne and be your puppet. We coordinate from inside and out, taking down the Storm Kingdom without spilling a single drop of blood." Couldn't help but laugh. This surrendering mole really knew how to play ball, saving me a lot of breath. I made the decision on the spot, doing exactly as he said, officially initiating the divine right of King's plan. The lens shifts back to the sea. Early the next morning, Groomy dragged her half-crippled body up onto the patrol warship. For the pie I drew for her, this little glutton directly transformed into a workaholic. Countless gelatinous tentacles stabbed into the deep sea, scanning madly like sonar. Before long, she abruptly raised her head, There are people below. As soon as the words fell, the surface of the sea exploded. Dozens of thick water whips burst out, tightly wrapping our aluminum-plated warships, dragging them desperately toward the sea. Deep underwater was precisely the fleeing storm knight, Cage. Knowing he couldn't escape, he left the only chance of survival to his subordinate female knight, Quintina, staying behind with the wizard Grover to cover their retreat. Drax had a violent temper. Carrying his Leviathan spear, he flipped and jumped straight into the sea, engaging Cage in battle. The water resistance was immense, and the two clashed with sword and shield, fighting until mud and sand cascaded down. The wizard Grover hid in the shadows, casting a spell, wanting to use steel binding to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, Groomy moved. Blue tentacles sneaked into the deep sea like venomous snakes, directly wrapping around Grover's ankles and winding upward. Grover was horrified and tried to chant a shield spell. Too late. Groomy's tentacles violently tightened, and a terrifying strangulation force instantly exploded. With a few crisp cracks, all the bones in Grover's body shattered. Fresh blood spewed wildly from his 7 orifices, and he died on the spot. Seeing his comrade die tragically, Cage went completely mad. His eyes were red, and regardless of the splitting wounds on his body, he directly activated a high-tier martial arts ultimate iron curtain. His entire Bodus pores frantically sprayed high-pressure air currents, forming an extremely terrifying white air bubble underwater. This move extremely overdrawn his life force. Cage was trying to take them down with him. Drax was pushed back continuously by the air waves, swallowing a bellyful of seawater. Groomy's tentacles were also snapped inch by inch. Cage seized the opportunity to close in, raising his greatsword, ready to chop off Drax's head. In this hair's-breadth moment, a row of deadly armor-piercing heavy crossbow bolts shot down from the surface of the sea. The Divine Kingdom warriors set up ballistae on the ships. Thigh-thick crossbow bolts viciously tore through the airwaves, 2 of them shooting directly through Cage's heavy armor, pinning him into a stagger. Drax seized the fleeting opening, let out a roar, and the titanium steel Leviathan spear in his hands shot out like a flood dragon, fierce and unmatched. With a loud crash, the spear directly pierced through Cage's abdomen, bursting out from his lower back. The storm's first knight completely rolled his eyes back, hogtied by tentacles and dragged onto the deck. On a distant, isolated island, the female knight Quintina looked at the massive air waves rising from the sea, her eyes red. She knew Cage was likely doomed, and with tears in her eyes, took the last 3 stragglers, swimming desperately toward the Storm Kingdom. Little did she know, letting them go was entirely within my plan. Evening, Headwind Port. The old fisherman Bernie rowed his small boat and scooped up the dying Quintina and her 3 men. Quintina gripped his arm tightly, shoving a full 50 gold coins into his hands, asking him to lead the way to see the Lord. The old fisherman held the massive sum, equivalent to his 7 years' income, frightened out of his wits, unloaded his cargo, and quickly ran home. At this very moment, the player Leo, living in the old fisherman's house, was on the verge of a total breakdown. He sat on the crude wooden bed, slapping himself fiercely with both hands left and right, smashing his head madly against the wall. Pain. Too much pain. The physical sensations of eating, drinking, and relieving himself were extremely realistic. Having endured it for a full day and night, he realized in despair that he simply could not log out of the game. Why hasn't anyone noticed him missing? My real physical body won't starve to death in bed, will it? Leo's eyes were bloodshot. Frustrated, he pushed away the fisherman's daughter who cared for him. Just as he was about to go crazy, the old fisherman brought back news. Headwind Port was recruiting army odd-job workers to fight foreign races at the front lines. 5 silver coins a day. Leo grabbed onto this like a life-saving straw, his eyes suddenly lighting up. This must be triggering the main quest line. As long as I finish the hidden quest, he'll be able to force a log out. He scrambled out the door, running straight for the registration office at the docks. Meanwhile, war clouds gathered densely over the docks of Headwind Port. The 3rd prince of the Storm Kingdom sat in a luxurious carriage, personally supervising the battle. Though the female knight Quintina was still recovering from severe injuries, she remained fully armed, staring deadened toward the deep sea. The army assembled, and giant ships hoisted their sails. These ignorant natives still didn't know that what they were about to face was not some foreign race at all, but a god hanging high in the heavens, looking down on them as mere playthings in his palms. I leaned against the outside of the glass cover, staring with great interest at this miniature war. Bay World, Headwind Port. Over 30 Storm naval warships had just formed their ranks when the piercing horn of an enemy attack blew suddenly. In the distant deep sea, 5 warships slowly approached. Leading the charge was the Storm Kingdom's lost flagship, the Nicholas. Following behind it were 4 blindingly shiny, aluminum-plated warships. My Divine Kingdom fleet had come knocking. On the deck of the Nicholas, the terrified 7th prince's legs went soft. My dispatched believers, Ulf and Luna, stood behind him like 2 baleful gods. On the Belmopan opposite them, the 3rd prince didn't waste words. He raised his hand, and nearly 100 wizards directly opened fire. Claws of the wind spirit. Explosive touch. The wind borrowed the fire's momentum, and the fire aided the wind's might. Monolithic heat waves turned into a sea of fire, pouncing madly toward the Divine Kingdom warships. The 3rd prince's gang was ruthless. They had absolutely no intention of leaving anyone alive. Ulf didn't even bat an eyelid. Boom! The seawater in front of the bow suddenly erupted, turning into a giant wall of water 10 meters high and 100 meters wide, crashing fiercely into the sea of fire. Massive amounts of white steam shot into the sky, shrouding the Nicholas like a ghost ship. The reason this wall of water had such immense power was entirely thanks to the slime Groomy hiding on which Meg's wrist, secretly amplifying it. Douglas, the chief fire wizard of the Storm Kingdom on the opposite side, saw this, and his eyeballs almost popped out. He simply couldn't comprehend what kind of water magic could withstand the concentrated fire of nearly 100 people. Seeing this, the third prince could only have people bring out tables and chairs, setting them up on the deck, pretending to be a gentleman to invite peace talks. Ulf carried the wimpy seventh prince and jumped onto the Belmopan. The seventh prince sat on the main seat, trembling as he announced, "Third brother, starting today, Headwind Port is under my jurisdiction." As soon as these words were spoken, the redrobed wizard Douglas flipped the table on the spot. Sparks flew wildly from his staff, and it looked like he was about to make a move. In this tense, deadly silent moment, the hurried sound of footsteps suddenly came from inside the cabin. The player Leo, seeking death with all his heart, stole a broken short sword from Waknoshir, charging onto the deck like a madman. "I am a player, give me a chew." Before he could finish shouting the phrase, "Give me a quest," Ulf backhanded a phantom giant hand to his face. His entire person flew backward at 10 times the speed he came with. With a muffled thud, Leo, like a blood-stained mural, was embedded firmly into the inner wall of the cabin, blood spurting wildly. He thought he could get a quick log out from a high-level NPC, but he couldn't even make a splash. The instant Ulf attacked, Douglas seized the opportunity for a sneak attack. Ring of fire impact. A ring of high-heat flames went straight for Ulf's face. Closely following was a flame strike tornado, directly sweeping Ulf into the fire tornado to burn madly. This old guy played extremely dirty, firing 2 pyroblasts in a row. Calf-sized fireballs smashed through the deck, blowing half of the port side to smithereens. With splinters and black smoke flew everywhere, and the entire Storm Navy broke into a cold sweat. With a sudden tearing sound, a thick arm directly ripped open the dense smoke. Ulf stepped out. His cloak had burned away long ago, revealing a suit of pitch-black monster armor. Douglas, terrified, quickly cast a layer of molten armor on himself. Ulf wasn't listening to reason at all. He dashed forward, raising his right fist to smash down hard. Bang, crack. The scorching molten armor shattered all over the floor like brittle biscuits. The berserk impact force blasted Douglas backward over a dozen meters on the spot. He snapped the gunnel railing before stopping, clutching his chest and spitting out fresh blood madly. Dead silence. These natives stared at Ulf as if looking at a monster. Ulf casually patted the dust off his arm, coldly looking at the third prince. "Is this the Storm Kingdom's hospitality?" The third prince panicked completely. He originally wanted to use military force to intimidate and stall for time to wait for the king's reinforcements. Now, his cards were all overturned. What was even more ruthless was that the Divine Kingdom's griffin was already circling above Headwind Port, scattering thousands of leaflets down like snowflakes. The terms of the treaty were made public directly. Headwind Port was reduced to a leased territory of the Divine Kingdom. Want to cut off the news? Too late. The third prince could only grit his teeth and swallow this mouthful of blood, stamping his great seal on the territorial concession declaration. On the distant clock tower, King Chodon 9 and the chief wizard witnessed the whole process, not even daring to let out a fart. In the blink of an eye, a year and a half passed in the miniature world. My Divine Kingdom had firmly established a foothold in the Bay world. Every day, dozens of aluminum-plated warships shuttled between Headwind Port and the Divine Kingdom, making a fortune by dumping golden wheat. As for that player Leo who sought death, he was slapped by the divine servant Ulf so hard his entire Bodus bones were broken, barely keeping one breath alive. Now he was paralyzed in the fisherman's house every day. Eating, drinking, and relieving himself all had to be served by others. His eyeballs could roll, his mind was clear, he just couldn't log out. He was simply the most miserable living corpse in gaming history. And my spy planted in Headwind Port, Justin, also welcomed a new task. Ulf tossed the witch Meg in front of him, specifying that Meg was to act as a private magic tutor for the elf girl Lilia. The deadline was a year and a half. Pass the test, and the Divine Kingdom would protect the island elves. Meg initially kept putting on airs as the royal court's deputy witch, saying she wouldn't teach trash. But Lilia demonstrated a mending spell on the spot, forcibly piecing together a broken vase so perfectly there wasn't a single crack. Meg broke out in a cold sweat watching it, and obediently shut her mouth. The viewpoint cuts back to the real world. I climbed out of bed, rubbing my aching temples. Looking down, the muscles in my arms were still convulsing involuntarily. Damn it, the ALS was still pulling at me. I walked over to the glass cover, pressing my hands onto the metal base. The source essence energy above the miniature world rushed wildly into my body. The numbers jumped, steadily stopping at B5. The muscle spasms finally subsided. As long as I continued to absorb energy, this terminal illness would eventually be completely crushed by me. Looking at the prosperous Headwind Port in the Bay world, I decided to go in personally to take a stroll. Opening the wardrobe, I dug out that set of Assassin's Creed white robe cosplay outfit I bought in college. Dressed neatly, I pulled up the hood. Since a god was descending, the sense of mystery absolutely could not be lost. I selected the coordinates and leaped into the miniature world. Boom! After a burst of spatial distortion, I landed steadily in an abandoned courtyard in the northwest corner of Headwind Port. As soon as I stepped onto the main street, I noticed something was wrong. There were dozens of murderous gazes hidden all around, absolutely not the kind of eyes ordinary civilians should have. I tailed those gazes all the way and stopped outside a mansion. It was the home of the former Lord of Headwind Port, a marquis. Standing in the shadow of the roof, I heard clearly, because his territory was snatched by the Divine Kingdom, causing his income to plummet by 70. This marquis was full of grievances. Douglas, who had been severely beaten, gave him a sinister idea to spend heavily to hire the Shadow Assassin Squad from the Gloom Kingdom. This gang planned to assassinate the grassroots officials of the Divine Kingdom, then frame the Third Prince to provoke an all-out war between the two sides. I sneered. Just these underhanded little tricks. Perfect to leave as a whetstone for the underlings of the Divine Kingdom. Too lazy to intervene, I turned and melted into the night, heading straight for Lilia's residence. Right now in the study, which Meg was so annoyed she wanted to hit the wall. She secretly practiced the mending spell with a few pieces of broken porcelain, but for the life of her, she couldn't achieve Lilia's seamless realm. Just as she was feeling frustrated and restless, I pushed open the window and flipped inside directly. Upon seeing a stranger intruding, to protect her dignity as the deputy witch, Meg launched a deadly move right away. Flash! The tiny wand erupted with a blinding glare. Immediately following, dozens of pale blue orbs of light dragged their tails, smashing down upon my head and face. Arcane missiles. Facing this kind of dense magical bombardment, I didn't even have the interest to dodge. Without stopping my steps, I forcibly walked forward against the missiles. Bang, 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 bang. All the light orbs smashed onto my body and exploded. When the dust cleared, I patted the dust off my white robe, completely unharmed. Not even the corner of my clothes was torn. Good combat awareness, I evaluated faintly. Justin downstairs heard the commotion and rushed up with Lilia like crazy. Seeing the face under my hood, Justin's legs went soft. He fell to his knees with a thud, shouting fanatically, "Teacher!" Meg froze entirely in place, her mouth open wide enough to fit an egg, her legs shaking like a sieve. She recognized me. A year and a half ago, it was me who casually tore her dimensional bag to pieces. I ignored the terrified witch, turning to look at Lilia. "Time is up, let me see how you've learned." In the backyard, to redeem herself, Meg desperately waved her wand, laying down several layers of advanced magical barriers. She wrapped the entire yard like an iron barrel to prevent mana fluctuations from leaking. Lilia swallowed hard in nervousness, raising her little wand. Force wave. Boom! A mass of high-pressure airflow shot out like a cannonball. On the steel-like soil reinforced by Meg, it directly blasted a crater half a meter deep. Dirt flew everywhere. This power was fiercer than an average high-level wizard. I nodded, hooking my finger at her. Aim at my body. Lilia gritted her teeth, pointing her wand. Fog cloud. A large expanse of thick fog appeared out of thin air, swallowing me instantly. Then she followed up with another move. Oppressive force. Boom! My body suddenly felt heavy. The weight of the surrounding fog increased hundreds of times, pressing down like a small mountain. The soil beneath my feet cracked open directly, and the soles of my boots sank deeply into the dirt. This spell combo was indeed played beautifully. Seeing me not even panting, Lilia grew bolder, her incantations speeding up. The surrounding fog was crazily compressed, directly turning into a massive, solid sphere of water, securely locking my entire person inside. "Water prison," Lilia shouted, then bit her lip and unleashed her most ruthless move, drowning spell. This magic was extremely vicious. All the surrounding water seemed to come alive, madly drilling into my pores, ears, and nasal cavity. If a normal creature was hit, even if they could break free, their internal organs would have long been crushed to mush by the water pressure. I closed my eyes. I didn't dodge because I was a projected body of descent, completely unafraid of physical damage. I allowed these berserk water currents to permeate my body, calming my mind to capture the fluctuations of that energy. Water magic, fire magic, source essence energy, soul power. Countless threads of clues intertwined in my mind. Suddenly, I opened my eyes. I understood. The attribute conversion laws of transcendent energy were completely disassembled by me at this moment. My body shook slightly. Bang! The indestructible water prison instantly fell apart. The sky-filling water droplets exploded against the barrier like bullets. Lilia screamed in terror, thinking she had drowned me till I exploded. Standing on the side, Meg and Justin, looking at me without even a single strand of hair wet, were already completely numb. Amidst the sky-filling exploded water mist, I patted the completely unwrinkled assassin's white robe on my body, looking up at the stiff-bodied witch Meg. "Your magic demonstration is over. Now, it's my turn." I extended my left hand, my 5 fingers slightly spread. Whoosh! A cluster of blazing white flames instantly erupted in my palm. The terrifying high temperature distorted the surrounding air. From several meters away, the tips of Meg's and Justin's hair gave off a burnt smell. Tier 1 spell, Palm Flame, just playing around. I closed my 5 fingers, extinguishing the flames. Meg was known as the #1 person in water magic in the Storm Kingdom, and she also had an extremely deep study of fire magic. She recognized this move at a glance. Compressing a tier 1 spell to rival a tier 3 was the limit of human mages. But this temperature that erupted with a casual squeeze from me directly shattered the limits of her cognition. The way she looked at me was like looking at an incomprehensible monster. Sending Meg to the backyard to continue teaching the elf Lilia, I turned and sat down. Justin hurried over to report the intelligence on Headwind Port. That player Leo, who sought death by touching porcelain extortion by faking injury, didn't die. He couldn't voluntarily log out in the miniature world. After the divine servant Ulf slapped him and broke all his bones, he barely kept a single breath alive. Every day he grimaced in pain, begging for life and death to no avail. I sneered, running into my territory to act like a demon. This is the result. Keep dispatching more people to watch him. As long as he doesn't die, treat it as a source of amusement. Justin pulled out 2 parchment scrolls and spread them on the table. The first one was the ancient eye relic pattern I drew. The second was a rough map. Teacher, I found it. Justin lowered his voice. Recently, the Storm Kingdom and Thunder Kingdom went to war at the border. Saruman, the High Priest of the Thunder Kingdom, used some kind of transcendent power to pull out 2 Storm Kingdom cities in a row. Someone saw with their own eyes that the magical artifact in Saruman's hand was stamped with the exact same eye pattern. The clue had finally surfaced. High Priest of the Thunder Kingdom, I got my eyes on you. Before setting off, I had to fulfill a promise first. Back when I had the slime Groomy run errands, I promised her a good meal. I walked into the yard, glancing at Lilia. This elf girl had just learned the fly spell for 3 months and was strenuously condensing a pair of small, translucent wings on her back. Meg watched coldly from the side, unfurling a pair of solid, realistic light wings on her back, her posture arrogant, wanting to claw back a bit of dignity as a master. I was too lazy to waste words. My eyes narrowed slightly, mobilizing the source essence energy within my body. Life force took shape. Soul power endowed the properties of wind. Whoosh! A pair of massive wings, nearly 10 meters wide, violently exploded from my back. The snow-white light plumes were dazzlingly bright, every single feather clearly visible. I flapped my twin wings, stirring up a gale to shoot straight into the extreme sky. The sunlight hit the wings, refracting a blinding holy light like the descent of a god. Meg's proud wings of light, in front of my giant wings, were simply like a bald wild chicken. Her eyeballs almost fell to the ground, and she couldn't utter a single word. Keep up, I dropped 2 words, leading them to fly towards the deep sea. Flying all the way over the coast, crossing the borderline between the Bay World and the Eden City world. On the vast plains below, the herders of the Divine Kingdom were grazing their cattle and sheep. Meg secretly opened her arcane sight. With just one look, she went completely numb. Pull out any random herder ante down there, and the magic fluctuations in her body were no less than the elite knights of the Storm Kingdom. This was the foundation of the Divine Kingdom, universal transcendence. I ignored their shock, landing in the east. Tristan, the Divine Kingdom's quartermaster general, had long been kneeling on the ground waiting. He had people carry up 5 large wooden chests. What was inside was entirely ether crystals that the Divine Kingdom's merchant caravans had crazily swept up from Headwind Port. I beckoned with my hand. Bang! The 5 chests of ether crystals shattered on the spot. 5 blinding pillars of light merged directly into my palm. The numbers on the panel jumped wildly. Available source essence directly soaring to be 39. This thrill of harvesting leaks to level up was simply addictive. Well done. I nodded, instructing Tristan to prepare to receive a divine bestowal. Cutting back to my main body, I opened the fridge in reality. I dug out a special commemorative edition giant Hell Devil Spicy Stick Latio I bought last month, a full 30 centimeters long. Conveniently, I also popped out an ice tray box filled with ice cubes. Before returning to the miniature world, I looked through the glass cover. A massive wooden platform had already been erected on the plains. Tens of thousands of little people from the 3 tribes were densely kneeling on the ground, looking up, waiting to see a miracle. Meg and Lilia hid in the distance, completely unaware of what was about to happen next. The divine bestowal is about to begin. Silence, Tristan bellowed. Tens of thousands of people instantly fell dead silent. Holding that giant spicy stick, I slowly reached into the glass cover. The clouds were roughly torn apart. A massive object that blotted out the sun pierced through the cloud layer, carrying a terrifying sense of oppression as it smashed fiercely toward the ground. Boom! The giant hell spicy stick smashed onto the wooden platform. The loud crash it erupted with, directly triggering a minor earthquake. The rich, pungent, spicy aroma swept through the entire venue instantly. Where had the miniature world ever seen a flavor of this dimension? Tens of thousands of little people twitched their noses crazily, intoxicated by the aroma. Immediately after, I poured down that box of ice cubes. Whoosh! Thud! 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 Over a dozen square blocks of giant ice, each comparable in size to a palace, crashed down. The temperature on the midsummer plains plummeted. Freezing water vapor spread madly. The whole venue boiled over. The little people kowtowed madly, repeatedly shouting the god's mercy. Meg, watching secretly in the distance, was thoroughly dumbfounded. Dropping mountain-sized blocks of ice in the summer, even if you tied all the water wizards in the world together, they couldn't achieve such a miracle. At this moment, the last trace of luck in her heart turned to ash, dead set on recognizing the reality that I was a true god. As for that slime Groomy, she had long turned into a young girl and dived headfirst into the carriage filled with chopped-up spicy sticks, eating until her mouth dripped with oil, licking even the carriage dregs completely clean. Having settled the divine bestowal, I called the Divine Kingdom higher-up, Sylvia, before me. I directly drew a large circle circle on the map. Don't just do business in Headwind Port. I stared into her eyes. Build more aluminum-plated warships. Sell the spicy holy food and golden wheat to the 4 great kingdoms. Whoever dares to block the way, annihilate them directly. I want the entire Bay world to know that the rules on the sea are now set by the Divine Kingdom. Military hegemony is the fastest economic plunder. Once I got the relic from the High Priest, the natives of these 4 kingdoms would have to queue up just to be leaks. With the instructions given, I transformed into a beam of light and shot into the sky, leaving the miniature world. Next, it was time to meet that High Priest of the Thunder Kingdom. Standing outside the glass cover, I looked down, searching for the border between the 2 countries. The night in the miniature world was very dark. I had to slide open the glass cover and lean my face close to observe. Nearly 20,000 orc warriors were holding torches, marching through the night. These guys were over 2 meters tall, had fangs, and were extremely hairy. You could feel their body odor and cheap alcohol stench across the air. At the very front of the line, that hunched old man leaning on a walking stick was the High Priest Saruman. I was just about to lock on and land. Suddenly, an indescribable tingling itch rushed straight up my nasal cavity. I had never been allergic to dog hair before. Who would have thought today I'd have a reaction to over 20,000 orcs? Achoo! A deafening sneeze slipped from my mouth. In the miniature world, this was a world-destroying Category 9 hurricane. Berserk air currents descended from the sky, smashing fiercely into the orc army like a doomsday storm. Hundreds of orcs, who were drinking and bragging just a second ago, were blown into midair on the spot, smashing heavily into meat paste. What's going on? Enemy attack. The orc first warrior, Cairn, roared, gripping the ground tightly. High Priest Saruman reacted extremely fast, raising his walking stick and screaming, "Mass Earth Bind!" Hundreds of priests cast spells madly, firmly sucking thousands of people onto the ground. Just as the storm stopped and before the orcs could catch their breath, my nose started itching again. Achoo! A second destructive hurricane crashed down again. Saruman turned pale with fright, wildly casting a mass stone skin, and then striking an air's fury towards the sky, trying to bombard the storm. As a result, his magic ripples were like paper mache, instantly shredded by the hurricane. Saruman spat out a mouthful of old blood, stepping back several times before falling into his subordinate's arms. 2 sneezes finished, I quickly closed the glass cover and stepped aside, rubbed my nose and mixed a cup of cold medicine granules. Looking back at the miniature world, the orc army of over 20,000 people had over 1,000 sprayed to death directly by my 2 sneezes. The injured exceeded 5,000. The Grand Army collapsed across the board, retreating to their stronghold overnight. That High Priest Saruman also vanished without a trace, using the chaos. What a mess. I originally just wanted to grab a person and ended up accidentally destroying an army. Since the person ran away in the chaotic army, I had no choice but to go in personally to find him. I dug out a Bleach Hollow cosplay mask and put it on my face, pairing it with my assassin's white robe. This outfit's mystery level was maxed out. Withstanding the rejection of the rules, I directly descended on the northeastern edge of Headwind Port. As soon as I landed, a brown-haired teenager ran over panting and called out to me, "Sir, are you also a mercenary heading to the front lines to kill orcs? Our squad is still short of 1 person. Could you take us with you?" I stopped in my tracks. Mercenary? The teenager was named Gabriel. Seeing me ignore him, he gritted his teeth and pulled out a shriveled coin purse, shoving it over. Inside was entirely pitiful copper coins and a few silver coins. "We really need to take this commission, but we must form a party of 5. Please help us, we'll give you a share of the reward." I took the coin purse, followed him to a dilapidated carriage. On the carriage were 2 other boys and a girl. The fat boy Pluto, the short boy Simon, and the girl Jenny. They were all half-grown kids of 14 or 15. In the Bay world, mercenaries were divided into 5 tiers: black iron, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. These 4 little guys had bronze tags hanging around their necks. They were rookies who had just touched the threshold of transcendence. They asked my rank. I didn't speak, just clenched the few silver coins from the purse. My palm instantly erupted with terrifying high heat. The silver coins melted on the spot, shaped by my mind into a curved silver nameplate. I threw the still steaming silver nameplate onto the table. The way the 4 kids looked at me instantly turned into looking at a big daddy. Silver tier veteran. The fat boy rubbed his hands excitedly. I poured cold water directly. "You 4 don't even have the strength of 1 tempering. Going to the front lines to kill orcs besides delivering heads, what else can you do?" Gabriel flushed red, pulling out a royal call to arms. "The country is in peril. Even if we die on the battlefield, we must realize our value." I sneered. The Storm Kingdom used to act like bandits and rob the orcs' territory. Now that the orcs fought back, the old king was fooling these hot-blooded, silly, sweet kids to go up as cannon fodder. Disgusting enough, but I was too lazy to point it out. Either way, I just needed an identity cover to go to the front lines and find the High Priest. "My name is Deus." I leaned against the corner of the carriage and closed my eyes to rest. By evening, the carriage arrived at the Gold Sand Townway station. This was the final supply point before heading to the front lines, gathering a large number of mercenaries wanting to profit from the war. As soon as as we got off, a commotion broke out ahead. 6 heavily armored knights riding tall warhorses swaggered past, their armor covered in spikes. It's the gold-tier mercenary group, Thorns of the Rose. Gabriel's eyes shone. I took a glance. 3 times tempering level. In the Divine Kingdom, they were only fit to be mid-level captains. The 4 little bronzes were severely shaken, retiring to their in rooms early to rest, brooding over how they were going to die tomorrow. I didn't sleep, pushed open the balcony door, and flipped directly onto the roof. On the roof 2 buildings away, stood a dark shadow, wearing tight-fitting black armor, gray hair covering his eyes, and a mask covering his face. Looked just like a ghost. I walked over, glancing at the gray nameplate on his neck. Platinum tier mercenary. You are very confident you can escape from in front of me. My tone was icy. The dark shadow smiled, retracting his defensive posture and holding out his hand. I am Dylan, a member of the Gravekeepers organization from the Gloom Kingdom. Lord Deus, a pleasure. I ignored his hand. What do you want with me? Seeing that I hadn't even heard of the famously prominent Gravekeepers, Dylan was a bit puzzled, but still stated his price directly. Your Excellency's aura is hidden too perfectly. You absolutely don't belong with these bronze rookies. I'd like to invite you to join our organization. You think you're worthy of being my companion? I asked back. Of course. The corner of Dylan's mouth twitched up, seemingly wanting to show me a trick. With a poof, his body directly turned into a cloud of smoke, vanishing out of thin air. A few seconds later, he reappeared a few meters away, his face full of smugness. Advanced Assassin Ultimate Skill Vanish. Lord Deus, only an assassin understands an assassin best. I looked at the spot he just stood, carefully recalling the energy fluctuations of that instant he vanished. Spatial type soul power conversion. Understood. Is that so? I sneered. Poof, right in front of his face. My body directly exploded into a cloud of smoke. Not even a speck was left. Aura completely zeroed out. The smile on Dylan's face instantly froze. He stared deadly at the spot I vanished from, swallowing hard. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes passed. Dylan completely panicked. His vanish could last 10 seconds at most. I had directly turned invisible for over 2 minutes and still hadn't come out. This was no longer an assassin expert. This was an assassin master. Your Excellency, Lord Deus, your unparalleled technique has opened my eyes. Please, you must consider joining the Gravekeepers. Dylan bowed frantically on the roof, shouting like a salesman. He had absolutely no idea that I had long ago used Void Blink to blink directly back into my in-room. These flashy little parlor tricks were only good enough to fool the natives. Early the next morning, I pushed open my room door, looking at the 4 little bronzes sporting dark circles under their eyes. Get ready to move out. We're hunting orcs.